Chapter 2241. Guan Yisong stared into the distance with a determined gaze. She supported her mother, and the two of them took advantage of the chaos to escape through the back door. When they turned back, the entire Guan family was shrouded in the darkness of night. Terrified screams could be heard from time to time. Good and evil will be repaid in the end. It's not that they won't. It's not time yet. Guan Yisong looked back coldly. She supported her mother and quickly disappeared into the night. The Guan family in Ani Prefecture started a fire that burned for most of the night. It was only after midnight that the fire was extinguished by a heavy downpour. Arbor held her husband's hand as they walked into Peach Garden. She couldn't help but frown. "Do you still smell blood?" Emolien naturally noticed this subtle change in her expression, and he quickly pulled her into his arms and fanned the tip of her nose. Miss Chow puffed her cheeks in displeasure. "We shouldn't have let that stinking rat into Peach Garden." Fish Orchid Star was a vast ocean, and time flowed 12 times faster than the outside world. Naturally, it couldn't contain scum. As for Chu Yunxing, it was Long Chiyun's last piece of pure land. Arbor was even more unwilling to dirty it. Thus, she could only temporarily imprison Guan Zhaodang and the others on Peach Garden. Fortunately, Qiuqiu had tactfully built a 12-story prison in the most remote corner of Paradise Planet for her. Naturally, it was more than enough to fit all these people inside. Guan Zhaodang and the others would only think that they were imprisoned in a dungeon. They would have no idea that they were in Miss Qiao's personal spirit domain. The prison was extremely tall, and green murderous vines crawled all over it. The soil structure had also been reinforced by Little Earth countless times. It was extremely sturdy. Even a few early-stage God Realm cultivators wouldn't be able to escape, much less a mere rank 14 Spirit Realm cultivator like Guan Zhaodang. Moreover, on Paradise Planet, Qiuqiu was essentially the god of this place. It only needed a strand of divine sense to annihilate all of them without leaving a single trace behind. When Xiaomu entered, Big Treasure was currently leading 2 golems and whipping the already unconscious Guan Zhaodang with force. "Oh, my beautiful little master. You are the sun and clouds in the sky, my goddess." Arbor, Emolien couldn't help but burst out laughing. "Was it so talkative when you made it?" "Yes, as long as it has spirit stones, it can continue to speak like this. The words of praise can't be repeated." Emolien nodded with a smile. Right now, Xiaomu seriously suspected that Crown Prince Mo had most likely taught this golem how to say these mushy praises when he was creating it. The two of them were standing on the first floor of the pagoda. As soon as they walked in, they felt a wave of yin qi rush towards them. A shadow of the small tree appeared on the opposite prison wall and let out a burst of weird laughter. Accompanied by the shaking branches, it waved vigorously on the wall, creating an inexplicable and terrifying atmosphere. "Welcome to the Tower of Punishment." Ha ha! Once you enter the Tower of Punishment, you can only obtain your freedom through continuous labor and reform. Emolien felt as if a bunch of crows were flying past her head. Arbor. From a 1st to the 12th floor of the Tower of Punishment, the punishments are heavier with every floor. If you reach the 12th floor, then congratulations. You'll be thrown into a pot of boiling oil and climb a mountain of blades. All the punishments that you've memorized in your heart will serve you once. No need to thank me. Chapter 2242. Arbor. Emolien couldn't help but want to laugh out loud. She looked at Arbor meaningfully. "My Joe, I didn't expect you to have such a bad taste. Did you do this? Tower of Punishment? It's the same name as the Tower of Punishment set up by the Heavenly Tao. The whole thing was a knockoff." Arbor, "Thank you, but I don't have the time to do this nonsense. This Qiuqiu really has nothing better to do. Wake him up." Looking at Guan Zhaodang, who didn't have a single good piece of flesh on his body, Arbor inexplicably sympathized with this guy. "Okay, my beautiful little master. As you wish." A big smile appeared on DeBayo's metal black face. Splash! That guy casually picked up a ladle of salt water and poured it over him. Judging from his skillful movements and style, this wasn't the first time he had done something like this. Guan Zhaodang woke up with a shrill scream. The wounds all over his body were soaked in salt water, and his muscles were trembling. He clenched his teeth and endured great pain. Arbor shrunk his body. Yin glared at the golem in annoyance. "You scare my Jojo." Debeo listlessly took 2 steps back. He twiddled his fingers and said timidly, "Master, I'll be gentler next time." After Guan Zhaodang stopped trembling for a while, he finally calmed down. Arbor then stretched out his hand, and a small purple medicine bottle appeared on his palm. "Hand over a strand of your spiritual consciousness. Take this medicine and become my servant." Don't even think about it." Guan Zhaodang clenched his teeth and said with a trembling body, "Don't even think about it." Arbor glanced at him coldly. "Do you know what's more terrifying than death?" Guan Zhaotang's heart trembled for some reason, and he stood there in a daze. "It's the painful feeling of not being able to die, even if you want to," Arbor said coldly. His dark eyes looked at Guan Zhaodang faintly. "I'll give you another chance to choose." Guan Zhaodang was not the kind of iron-blooded man he thought he was. In fact, he had already admitted defeat in his heart. Now that he was frightened by Arbor, he hurriedly lowered his head and quickly took out a strand of spiritual sense from his conscience and handed it to Arbor. Arbor stored it in a storage talisman. He then asked Bao to take out a poison pill from the medicine bottle and stuffed it into the caretaker hall's mouth. Only then did he nod in relief. Yin looked down at her and couldn't help but reach out to pat her little head. His little fellow was so cautious. She didn't think it was safe to just take the person's spiritual sense. In addition, she added a layer of poison to control the person's body. He really appreciated her approach. She was indeed his wife. This level of black-bellied was a tradition of the Mo family. Within 10 days, report all the forces in an E-prefecture to the Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord. After throwing down this sentence, Qiao Mu left on her own. There were no less than 3,000 E-prefecture guards on the 2nd floor. There was no need to go through so much trouble for them. He could just ask each of them to hand over a strand of spiritual sense. Arbor went down to the 1st floor and threw the storage talisman containing the spiritual sense of the 3,000 E-prefecture guards to Guan Zhaodang. "Give this to the Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord for safekeeping. In the future, just listen to his orders and do as he says. Dun Zhong, this guy, you have to take good care of the 6 prefectures. Don't let me down." Arbor muttered to himself. Chapter 2243. The two plucked some fresh oranges, pears, and other fruits and left Paradise Planet. Arbor patted her little head. "Wait for me." She entered Paradise Planet again and handed a pair of eggs to Little Water Child. She stroked its head and said, "Help me find a good place with dense spiritual energy and take good care of them." "Okay." Little Water Child wrapped the 2 phoenix eggs in a mist and nodded repeatedly. Ignoring the 3 puppies who were pouncing and barking, Arbor roared at the 3 puppies. "You're not allowed to eat." "Woo woo woo." The 3 puppies actually rolled around on the ground. This was too human-like. Arbor didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she looked at them. With a flip of her hand, she took out 3 bottles of shining medicinal liquid from her inner world and waved them in front of the 3 puppies. "You're not allowed to have any ideas about the sacred beast eggs. This is for you to eat." Woof, 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 woof. The 3 puppies rubbed against her feet and circled back and forth a few times. Each of them used their little paws to grab a bottle of medicinal liquid and frolic to the side. Arbor shook her head speechlessly. She called Chio over and instructed it, mainly to keep an eye on the puppies so they wouldn't secretly eat the phoenix eggs. When she flashed out again, she saw that Hu Jinshun, Little Tai Sui, and the others had already returned. Dao Wuji waved his hand at Arbor and said with a smile, "Little sister-in-law, everyone in Ani Prefecture has either run or scattered. Most of them have fled." Arbor nodded and had Cho knock out Caretaker Tang and the 3,000 Ani Prefecture guards before throwing them out. "HM?" Little Tai Sui suddenly frowned and looked up at the sky. 2 powerful auras are coming. Everyone's expressions became vigilant. In less than a second, 2 white-haired elders stepped on the black curtain and quickly moved over. In a flash, they arrived in front of Arbor and the others. Cho waved its small branch, and chuckled as it hit Caretaker Tang several times. Caretaker Tang suddenly woke up with a start. When he looked up and saw the two Oni Prefecture consecrators descending, he almost cried out for help and joy. But at that moment, he felt an inexplicable pain in his mind. When he looked up at the ebony talisman in Arbor's hand, Guan Zhaotong's mind suddenly became clear. He rushed over with tears in his eyes and cried at the feet of the two consecrators, "Seniors, you came at the right time. The powerful enemy has already been driven away by our friends. Seniors, please chase after them in that direction." The two Oni Prefecture consecrators frowned slightly and looked in the direction the caretaker hall was pointing. Why didn't he sense anyone's aura there? Their gazes swept across Arbor's group, and they were slightly shocked. The group of young men and women in front of them looked very young, but they couldn't see through the cultivation of quite a few of them. The two consecrators nodded at the Hall of Care, and without saying a word, they chased in the direction he pointed. Seeing that they had walked far away, Xiao Mu and the others finally let down their guard. Xiao Mu gazed coldly at Guan Zhaodang. "Do as I said just now." "Yes." Guan Zhaodang lowered his head. According to this young lady's meaning, Shuntian Prefecture's prefecture lord should also be one of her people. He really didn't expect that two of the most powerful territories among the 6 prefectures had already fallen into the hands of this unknown young lady. What a formidable character. Guan Zhaodang took a deep breath and then slowly closed his eyes. Since things had gotten to this point, he could only take things one step at a time. Chapter 2244. Divine Prefecture in the Qin Estates, Xiangxin Lake. There was a row of winding corridors that were carved with colored glass roofs and carved with crystals. Under the illumination of the sunlight, the corridors were dazzling and sparkling with rainbow-colored glaze. There were small windows in the corridors. Looking out from each window, one could see a different scenery. There was an outstandingly beautiful tree that poked out from the eaves and a mossy stone wall that was covered by the snow. There were pavilions, terraces, and pagodas forming a moving picture scroll. At first glance, the scenery was sparse, and the pavilions, terraces, and pagodas each had their own beauty. There was a smile on the woman's lips. She held an extremely exquisite red cedar wood tray in her hands as she gracefully passed through the dazzling corridors and entered the Huiji Pavilion in the middle of the Xiangxin Lake. Under the silver-pink chest wrap, her slender waist was bundled up high. Below, it was a pomegranate skirt made of flowing sand. A jade gourd bell was tied to a belt of the same color. As she walked, the crisp sound of the bell rang out along with the sound of the wind. The pearl hairpin on her head swayed, and green pearls twined around it. The most conspicuous item was a 5-fortune jade hairpin inlaid with large pearls. Under the sunlight, it emitted a dazzling luster. When Shi Yongqian entered the Huiji Pavilion, she deliberately slowed down her steps. The smile on her lips gradually deepened. Her pair of beautiful eyes lingered on the young man in the pavilion. Taking a deep breath, she walked in with her 2 maids. Inside the Huiji Pavilion, a tall and slender man in a purple robe was sitting on one side of a pillar. A book was spread out on his knees. One hand was supporting his forehead on the arched railing, and the other hand was casually swinging by his side. Even though he was asleep, this man's brows were still lightly furrowed. Shi Yongqian walked over with small steps. Just as she reached out her hand, she wanted to soothe the melancholy between his brows. But with a flash of cold light, the man had already opened his eyes. His gaze coldly fell on her body, and a dark green light flashed in his eyes. "Ah!" Shi Yongqian's hand trembled, and the tray she was holding immediately fell to the ground with a clang. The white jade porcelain cup on top of it shattered into pieces with a bang. "Ah, miss!" The 2 maids hurriedly ran forward and supported the falling Shi Yongqian. The man gently retracted the dagger in his hand and returned it to its scabbard before putting it back into his wide sleeves. That pair of abnormally cold eyes swept over Shi Yongqian without any warmth, and there was a trace of impatience between his brows. "Wang Cheng." A cold voice rang out. A black figure instantly landed beside him and knelt on one knee. "Wang Cheng is here." Take those traitorous bastards out and kill them. The man said coldly, "Don't let me see them again." Yes. Outside Huiji Pavilion, the cries of a few men and women could be heard. Someone knelt down with a plop and shouted towards Huiji Pavilion. "Young master, please spare my life. Please spare my life." After a few screams, the saber wind disappeared into the air. After that, there were no more piercing noises. Shi Yongqian bit her lips, her entire body trembling. You, second young master, you're too unreasonable." One of the maids couldn't help but cry out. "Our miss was kind enough to send you lotus seed soup. It's fine if you don't appreciate it, but you even humiliated miss like this." Shi Yongqian covered her face and sobbed. "Alexian, what's wrong with you? Ever since you came back half a year ago, to me you..." Young Master Omega Kitoku's entire body trembled. Chapter 2245. That memory appeared clearly in his mind again. Exian, you can't have really fallen in love with that woman and want to marry her, right? Exian, say something. Tisk, she's just a little pet that I'm raising. If it were you, would you marry your own pet? Don't say it, don't say it. Don't call me that. Don't call me Exian. Disgusting. It's disgusting just hearing it. The second young master's picturesque features completely contorted. He suddenly reached out his hand and forcefully waved it. Slap. Shi Yongqian's eyes widened in horror. She held her swollen left cheek with one hand and stared at the Omega Kitoku young master in front of her with an expression of disbelief. Second young master? What happened to second young master? Why did he seem like a completely different person? His vicious aura was so heavy. Scram. Scram immediately. Qin Exin roared angrily and flung away the servant girl's hand that was grabbing his sleeve. When the two servant girls saw their young miss being humiliated, their hearts were about to shatter. They cried out while weeping, "Second young master, how can you treat our young miss like this? Have you completely forgotten that you still have an engagement with our young miss?" Scram! Qin Exin roared angrily. His vicious aura erupted like a tidal wave. Shi Yongqian was flung to the ground by his vicious aura. She turned her head to look at him and cried out sorrowfully, Exin, what happened to you? You slut, it's all because of you. It's all because of you that she's been tortured so miserably. That's why she's doing everything she can to escape from me." A trace of murderous intent flashed through Qin Exin's eyes. He suddenly raised his hand, and purple lightning flashed between his fingers. Spirit lightning. The servant girl cried out in alarm, her complexion becoming incomparably pale. Kill her, and end everything." Qin Exin's eyes flashed with a vicious light. Shi Yongqian was scared silly by this gaze. She sat on the ground in a daze and looked up at her beloved man with tears streaming down her face. Was he going to kill her mercilessly? Stop. The Qin estate's patriarch, who had rushed over after hearing the news, hastily flew into the Huiji Pavilion. He slapped his son's handsome face and cursed loudly. "Bastard, what kind of madness are you having? Why aren't you collecting your thoughts and apologizing to Miss Shi?" Omega Kitoku raised the back of his hand and touched his slightly painful face. He looked at his father coldly. Hee. A deep laugh came from outside the Huiji Pavilion. Omega Kitoku looked up and saw his elder brother leaning against a pillar, looking at him with a smile. Qin Xian, that fellow, had never been proper. She was only wearing a thin spring shirt in the middle of winter, revealing more than half of her chest. There was a dot of cinnabar between his eyebrows. Against his snow-white skin, it looked exceptionally beautiful. His seductive eyes were seductive as he looked seductively at Miss Shi, who was sitting on the ground. "Aya, my younger brother, you really don't know how to have tender feelings for the fairer sex. Miss Shi, quickly let me see if you're injured." Eldest young, Sir Qin walked over with his clothes fluttering in the wind. Along the way, his handsome appearance made the two weak servant girls swoon, their faces flushed red. Eldest young Sir bent over and smilingly helped Miss Shi up from the ground. Shi Yongqian's face inexplicably reddened. She only glanced at this evildoer in front of her before hastily averting her gaze. How pitiful! Such a beautiful face has been beaten red. Chapter 2246. Eldest young sir went from bad to worse. He lifted Shi Yongqian's face with his finger and lightly blew on it. It doesn't hurt anymore. It doesn't hurt anymore. Shi Yongqian's heart started pounding wildly, uncontrollably. Sigh. Eldest young Sir Qin released his grip on Miss Shi's chin and turned around with a grin. He muttered softly, I thought his charm had declined, but it turns out it hasn't. Look, which woman wasn't head over heels for him? Even this Shi Yongqian, who adored second brother wholeheartedly, was bewitched to the point that her heart swayed and her mind wandered with a curl of his finger. Except for the little stoic. It seemed like other than the little stoic, she could casually snatch away second brother's things. How boring. Also, did the little stoic really belong to second brother? That didn't seem to be the case either. How vexing. Just thinking about that stoic face gave him a headache. What should he do? Eldest young sir instantly lost his playfulness and walked to the side to sit down. He folded his slender legs and watched this father-son quarrel scene with waning interest. My son has been impolite. Family head Qin cupped his hands at Shi Yongqian. Family head Qin's 50-something-year-old face was more solemn and cold than Qin Guilu's, and his expression was very rigid. Shi Yongqian wiped her tears and secretly peeked at the expressionless Omega Kotoku young sir. She couldn't help but feel exasperated. Although Omega Kotoku treated her very coldly before, he at least maintained his courteous appearance on the surface. Unlike now, when he viewed her as an enemy, when he flew into a rage just now, it seemed like he really wanted to kill her. Miss Shi, I'm truly sorry. My son was seriously injured half a year ago, and he hasn't fully recovered yet. Sometimes he might not be clear-headed, so please don't blame him, Miss Shi. Shi Yongqian wiped her tears and said delicately, Uncle Qin, I won't blame second young sir. I know that he was just momentarily distracted. Yes, he might have misunderstood me, that's why. I don't have any misunderstandings about you. Young Sir Omega Kotoku coldly interrupted her. Shi Yongqian, you better not appear in front of me in the future. Otherwise, I really might not be able to control myself and kill you. Family head Qin. Shi Yongqian. Sob, Uncle Qin. Unfilial son. Family head Qin cursed. What are you saying? You and Qin have been engaged since you were young. You little bastard, apologize to Qin immediately. We'll get married in 3 months. Pooh. Eldest young, Sir Qin laughed gracefully on the side. I say, second brother, the wedding was supposed to be half a year later, but because of your actions, it's been brought forward by 3 months. Congratulations. Congratulations to second brother for bringing home the beauty. As eldest young master spoke, he did not forget to throw a wink at his future sister-in-law. Shi Yongqian's heart began to beat wildly as she thought to herself, could it be that the eldest young master is interested in me as well? What should he do? There was only one Qin, and she had already given her heart to the second young master. It was impossible for her to have any relationship with the first young master, that eldest young master. That's hilarious. Ha 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 ha. Seeing his second brother suffer in pain, eldest young master felt elated. He was so happy. If eldest Qin could hear Shi Yongqian's fluttering heart right now, he would definitely roar with laughter. Heavens, this Miss Shi was truly a drama queen and a narcissist. He was just casually teasing this woman, and he liked her. He was really laughing at her face. What a ridiculous woman. The 8th watch ended. Chapter 2247. Young Master Omega Kotoku glanced coldly at Shi Yongqian before turning to bow to his father and walking out of the Huaiji pavilion. Family head Qin looked at his unruly son's back and was so angry that his head hurt. He pointed in the direction that second young master left and roared, Unfilial son. You, stop right there. Unfilial son. Father, second younger brother, is just in a bad mood. Don't be angry with him. Eldest young master walked up with a smile and took out a small gold fan from somewhere. He fanned himself beside his father like a lackey. Family head Sheen. But just looking at these two sons made him angry. They were both so outstanding, but the older one was playing around and was always away from home. The younger one was even more outrageous now. He used to be quite steady and reliable, but he didn't expect that he would be so conflicted about his marriage with the Sure family. Family head Sheen glanced at the mess on the floor and then looked at the timid Sure Yongxian standing at the side. He said apologetically, "Miss Sure, I hope you don't mind. Xian was seriously injured half a year ago and hasn't recovered yet. I'm afraid he's not in a good mood. He didn't mean to target you." "Uncle Sheen, what's going on? Who injured second young master?" At the mention of this, anger flashed through family head Sheen's eyes. "I asked him, but he didn't want to tell me. However, I won't let this matter rest. Unless that person didn't go to the Divine Province for the rest of his life, otherwise that there would come a day when he would meet him." Omega Kitoku returned to his own court full of viciousness. Before he entered his room, he heard a chuckle behind him. Second younger brother. Second young master turned around and looked coldly at eldest young master Sheen. "What do you want?" Eldest young master smiled meaningfully. "Why are you so angry?" He heard that this fellow had just dealt with several servant girls and servants. He had to admit that his viciousness was really heavy. "What's the use of keeping them?" Eldest young master Omega Kitoku said coldly. "They can't even do something as simple as guarding the door. A bunch of traitors. They actually let Sure Yongxian into the Hueji Pavilion to get close to him." He felt annoyed whenever he saw her. Omega Kitoku turned around and walked into the house. He had no intention of continuing the conversation with his elder brother. Eldest young master didn't stop him. He just leaned against the wall and watched him leave. Naturally, he knew about Omega Kitoku's injury half a year ago. It was rumored that when he returned, the situation was extremely miserable. His clone was completely destroyed. However, for so long, Omega Kitoku did not reveal anything to anyone. He was also very curious. Logically speaking, with Sheen Xian's temperament, who could get close to him and injure him to such an extent? Eldest young Sir Sheen rubbed his chin and glanced back at young Sir Omega Kitoku's courtyard before leaving silently. The servants in charge of cleaning the snow in the courtyard all lowered their heads, not daring to speak carelessly. What a joke. Some of their companions had already been executed by the second young master because they did not follow the 4 words, watch their words and actions. They still wanted to live well. Only by listening to the second young master's instructions and not acting on their own would they be able to live for a long time. Omega Kitoku kicked the door to his room shut and sat down in front of the table in irritation. He gripped the porcelain cup with one hand, and the scene of that icy arrow piercing his heart flashed before his eyes. The porcelain cup in his hand suddenly shattered. Chapter 2248. Nether Province. 15 kilometers outside of Great Yong City. Nightfall. The cry of an eagle filled the sky. The vigorous Eagle King flew over from afar with a group of people on its back, flying at an abnormally fast speed. After flying nonstop for a day and a night, everyone was a little tired. After discussing, they pressed down on the eagle and dismounted. 13 or 14 people filed off the eagle's back. They found a clean place, gathered in a circle, and started a small fire. So tired, after rushing all the way, Akir's small face was almost devoid of spirit. At this moment, she was half bent and lightly pounding her sore legs and shoulders with her fists. Naturally, Ollie was in the same situation as him. However, he was a man who cared a lot about his reputation. No matter how tired he was, he wouldn't be like Akir, pounding here and there as if no one else was around and constantly complaining that he was tired. "Don't worry, Mississippi. We will enter the capital in about 4 to 6 hours. The one who spoke was an old man who chuckled as he poked at the fire in front of him. "Let's rest here for the night and leave tomorrow morning," ACI said with a heavy expression. Yes. Everyone took out rice and vegetables from their inner worlds and started a stew dinner. ACI didn't say much and left the group alone. He walked to the side and looked up at the bright crescent moon under the night sky. "Brother ACI here. Akir walked to his side with a smile and handed him a rabbit leg. ACI glanced at it, took it, and sat down under a tree. Brother ACI, what are you thinking about? Akir asked with a smile as she sat down next to him. Nothing. ACI didn't have any intention of chatting with her. He tore into the rabbit meat in his hand and replied indifferently. Now that Brother ACI has returned to Nether Province, you can naturally get back at him for the grievances you suffered, Akir said. Akir chattered, especially. Not long ago, when Big Brother ACI returned to the tribe, he was hunted down by Northernmost Crown Prince for thousands of miles and almost lost his life. Speaking of this, Akir became angry. At that time, the three of them had led hundreds of guards back to the Aikido tribe. Along the way, they encountered people sent by Northern Prince Mo, who chased and intercepted them. Akir gritted her teeth in anger at the thought that she had almost lost her life on the road. Now that we have returned to the underworld region, we can deal with that arrogant man. It's also good to send more people back and destroy his small kingdom of Northern Mo. CI glanced at her and snorted. Northernmost sky is currently surrounded by talisman arrays. Ordinary people simply can't return. Then we're just going to suffer like this? Akir was so angry that she clenched her fists. Back then, Northern Prince Mo had really sent people to hunt them down. From the moment they left Northern Mo City, they chased them all the way to the Aikido tribe. This perseverance was simply amazing. What do you know? Yasi fidgeted with his hair. If it wasn't for the fact that the dual-star immortal spirit bracelets had angered Prince Mo, nothing would have happened. Northern Prince Mo isn't that simple. He's just the crown prince of a small kingdom in the lower star domain. What does he have that Brother ACI is afraid of? Akir snorted. He's not the crown prince of some small northern Mo kingdom. ACI leaned against a tree and looked up at the dark sky. He said coldly, "That's the crown prince of the divine province." Akir, you are too ignorant. Akir's eyes instantly widened in disbelief. Chapter 2249. When Arbor woke up naturally, she was informed by Mo Lien that the 10,000 jade slips had arrived. The little fellow naturally went out to look at her blank jade slips happily. She took a piece and looked at it. The thin jade slips had an extremely transparent color and were just right for making jade talismans. Prince Mo stood beside her with a smile and asked, "How about these blank jade slips? If they're still too thick, we can get them to work on them a little more." "Very good." Arbor nodded vigorously and kept the boxes of jade slips of the same size and thickness in her inner world. "I'm very satisfied." The two of them were now standing in front of the mansion they just bought. The small mansion wasn't big and only had 2 courtyards. It was more than enough for the two of them to stay here in a low-key manner for a while. It didn't take much effort to move from the inn to this small mansion. The two black-hearted fellows had a tacit understanding and directly left the group of beautiful women that Mo Kun had sent over to the inn as cleaning maids. Putting it nicely, they had received a lot of care from the inn's owner during this period of time and left a few beauties behind as a token of respect. Those pitiful, delicate beauties were left behind in the inn and had to serve tea and water every day. They had already cursed this crown prince 18 times in their hearts and regretted it so much. If they had known that this person was such a scammer, would they have fought so hard to get him? Arbor packed up dozens of boxes of blank jade slips and only took 100 of them back to her room to draw talismans. Among the talismans she had comprehended last time, other than the doppelganger talisman that left a deep impression on her, there was also the drawing method of the ghost summon talisman. At this moment, she checked the remaining demonstration talismans. She took a talisman called the Soul Separation Talisman and looked at it repeatedly. This was not so mysterious. This Soul Separation Talisman could extract one's soul and release it outside to speed up the cultivation of spiritual sense or divine sense. This method was simply unheard of and unseen. However, according to the talisman's explanation, this kind of external spiritual sense cultivation speed would be very fast. It was just that. She recalled that her master had said that her soul was unstable, and she couldn't help but feel a little hesitant. It was best to use the soul-leaving talisman with caution. The little fellow put away the soul-departing talisman demonstration talisman, lowered his head, and drew another dozen or so clone talismans. Only then did he put away the remaining blank jade slips with satisfaction, and happily looked at the dozen or so clone talismans he had just drawn. He raised his hand and touched the runes on it. Then, he happily went out to find Lien to tell her about his happiness. Now that she was a profound great talisman master, she was able to smoothly inscribe jade talismans, and the quality of the finished product looked very good. Lien saw her running out with several jade talismans in her hands. She couldn't help but take one out of curiosity. After looking at it carefully, she nodded and said, "How about I try it?" "All right." Arbor nodded and gave him a doppelganger talisman. Lien skillfully opened the talisman for her own use. A stream of talisman power suddenly entered his body. Instantly, he felt his body lighten. Two illusory shadows appeared beside him. As soon as Lien moved, the two afterimages also started brandishing their arms, smoothly executing a set of punches with the main body. After Lien blasted a palm at the stone block in front of her, the two shadows followed suit and blasted out a palm at the same time. 3 life forces landed on that stone block at the same time. Naturally, the stone block was blasted into pieces. Lien nodded and said, "How long can this doppelganger talisman last?" Chapter 2250. Man, it's not too long. The little fellow's head drooped as she said weakly, "Just 2 minutes. That's already very good." Prince poked her head lightly. In battle, there are many changes in the blink of an eye. Being able to create 2 doppelgangers in such a short period of time is already enough. Moreover, your doppelganger talismans should be able to be stacked, right? Arbor's eyes brightened as she looked up at him. "How did you know?" Prince couldn't help but laugh as he held her hand and led her to the living room. "How could I not understand you, little thing? Drawing a bunch of doppelganger talismans and throwing them out one after another like you do. What use is a 2-minute time limit on you?" "Not all." The little fellow who kept throwing out doppelganger talismans would probably become a magnificent sight in battle again. Arbor pursed her lips, feeling that her dear husband was really too smart. She had indeed stored a lot of doppelganger talismans in her inner world and planned to draw more in her spare time. If she drew 1,000 or 800 of them, each doppelganger talisman would have a limited time, so she would just stack a few dozen of them. "Naughty." Lien patted her head and said with a smile. Arbor obediently let him hold her hand as the two entered the living room. They sat down at the table and started eating breakfast. After subduing Ani Prefecture and Shantian Prefecture, the 6 prefectures were mostly settled. Miss Chow didn't want to care about the rest of the trivial matters and left them to Dun Zhu to worry about. After eating, "Let's go for a stroll." "Okay." Lien naturally agreed. He had been in Ani Prefecture for so many days, but he hadn't been able to accompany his Jojo for a walk. The little fellow must be bored. Arbor was in a good mood. After quickly finishing the porridge and snacks in front of her, she pushed away the stool and called out, "I'm going to change." Lien couldn't help but laugh as he looked at her back and nodded. "Jojo, you're already very pretty. You don't need to dress up." Miss Chow returned to her room and wiped her face before putting on a fiery red dress. When she appeared in front of Lien, the little girl was as red as a ball of flame. Under the sunlight, her rosy white skin looked so delicate that it could be broken by the wind. She was extremely cute. The Crown Prince's heart skipped a beat. He couldn't help but reach out to pull her into his arms and kiss her tender forehead. "My baby, did you specially change into this red robe?" The Crown Prince teased. "Because your husband is wearing a set of dark red clothes today." He was just teasing her. To his surprise, Xiaomu looked up at him and nodded with absolute certainty. You deserve it." The Crown Prince was stunned. Then, he leaned against her forehead and chuckled deeply. What should he do? His heart was about to ripple. Looking at her like this every day, he felt that he liked her even more. The little girl was too likable. "You're really too compatible." Prince Mo raised her Jojo up high and kissed her hard in his arms. "My JoJo is so beautiful. I can't bear to let others see you." Arbor blinked. She suddenly reached out to take a small mirror from her inner world and looked at herself. She sighed with emotion. I'm really too beautiful." Prince Emo couldn't help but laugh loudly. He held her little hand and walked out of the door. My God, his JoJo was too amusing. Every time this little guy did something soft and cute, he looked especially cute. Chapter 2251. If nothing goes wrong, Dun Zong should be able to make it today. Emo Yin held the little fellow's small hand as the two strolled leisurely along the street. It was really quite cold outside. Because of the light snowfall, there were still traces of snow on the treetops. Emolian bent down to straighten the collar of the Fire Marten fur coat for her and wrapped her cloak tighter around her. "It's not cold at all." Arbor looked up at him. However, Prince Emo felt that she was cold. When he held her small hand, he even wrapped a faint fire spirit around her to warm her. Along the way, although the cold wind whistled, the little fellow felt a little hot. She even wanted to take off her cloak. "It's cold." Emolian reached out to help her tighten her collar and reached out to carry her. "I'd better carry you. It's very cold." Arbor's small face reddened slightly as she turned sideways to avoid his embrace. She glared at him from the corner of her eyes. "Cold your head." She still felt cold at her cultivation level. "You must be joking." Emolian blinked. He didn't feel that he was taking advantage of his wife at all. Seeing that she wouldn't let him carry her, he looked at her pitifully and held her small hand. "I'm afraid that you'll catch a cold." "I'm not cold." Arbor huffed and glared at him from the corner of her eyes. She was already wrapped in a thick Fire Marten fur cloak. How could she still feel cold? To tell the truth, even if she didn't wrap it up and only wore a thin spring shirt, with her cultivation level, she couldn't possibly feel cold. Prince Emo resentfully retracted his hand. Oh, he secretly looked at his wife. "Jojo, what has Second Uncle Master been busy with these 2 days?" Second Uncle Master is preparing things to go to the Divine Continent. Emolian, what was there to prepare? After we're done with Ani Prefecture, we still have to return to Shuntian Prefecture and take the little yellow crane with us. Arbor lowered her head in thought as she spoke. Emolian didn't comment. It was not a problem for Jojo to bring his family to Shinjo. The problem was, what did Second Uncle have to prepare? Everyone had an inner world. What did the Divine Land not have? They had to replenish everything here. Second Martial Uncle heard that the prices in the Divine Land were particularly high, so he thought that if there was anything he could buy in Ani Prefecture, he would buy it first. Prince Emo looked confused. Are prices in Shinjo very high? He didn't think so. Xiao, tell Martial Aunt not to worry about it. When she goes to the Divine Land, I guarantee that she will have nothing to worry about. She won't have to worry about anything. Arbor glanced at him. If Martial Uncle wants to prepare more, then let her be. Emolian nodded helplessly. While the two of them were chatting, they suddenly heard screams coming from the street in front of them. "Oh my God, this ghost spirit is really fierce. How dare you show up in broad daylight? Taoist priest, be careful." Arbor and Emolian looked at each other and hurried over. They parted the crowd to take a look. They saw a familiar-looking Taoist priest flying to and fro in the middle of the crowd, leaping high and low. He held a peachwood sword in his hand and looked like he was going to fight ghosts. At first glance, his face was flushed red, like someone who was constipated. Arbor's mouth twitched silently. She recognized at a glance that this guy was the swindler Taoist priest she saw in Kyoto village. His life was truly a struggle. He had traveled far and wide, causing a ruckus all the way to Ani Prefecture. Arbor looked at this Taoist priest awkwardly in the middle of the crowd, speechless for a moment. It was really a small world that she met this weird Taoist priest again. Chapter 2252. Everyone, get out of the way. This ghost spirit is extremely powerful. Don't let it collide with you. The Taoist priest shouted angrily. The bright flying sword in his hand started to spin as if it had a mind of its own. It fought back and forth with a wisp of black smoke in midair. Everyone stared blankly, clapping their hands and cheering. Arbor was speechless. She had already seen clearly that the Taoist priest was holding a strand of wild silk that ordinary people couldn't see clearly. He was using it to guide and control the flying sword as it danced up and down. From the looks of it, it looked like he was controlling the sword from a distance. He was very capable. After such an awkward performance, even Yin felt that the guy was so embarrassed that she couldn't bear to watch it anymore. Unexpectedly, the Taoist priest actually flew into the air at the last moment, as if he was holding onto the wisp of black smoke. He shouted, "Where do you think you're going?" Arbor was speechless. She really wanted to kill this Taoist priest who lied all the time. "Tut!" The Taoist priest spat out saliva and shouted angrily again. He pretended to fall with the wisp of black smoke and landed heavily on the ground. He wiped away the wisp of black smoke with 2 punches. The onlookers cheered and clapped after seeing such an exciting scene of the Taoist priest taming the ghost spirit. Arbor looked at her dear husband speechlessly. Yin couldn't help but laugh. He held her little hand and squeezed it. He said softly, "Life isn't easy. Let him be." This was also how other people made a living. Arbor naturally wouldn't rashly expose that person. In any case, this drama queen had been jumping up and down for so long. This kind of physical work should at least be rewarded. But in reality, there really weren't many rewards that the Taoist priest begged for a round and only received 2 spirit coins pitifully. Arbor looked at his expression. He looked like he was about to cry. Clang! Arbor threw 10 spirit coins into the Taoist priest's begging box. The Taoist priest hurriedly turned his head to look. He saw a little girl dressed in red like a dazzling pearl, a ball of the most intense flame, looking at him expressionlessly. If she had some expression, it would be even more perfect, the Taoist priest thought. He rubbed his hands together and chuckled as he approached her. He bowed repeatedly and said, Little girl, is that you?" A little girl from Kwoto village. The last time he saw her, it was still on the streets of Shuntian Prefecture. That little girl had such an exquisite and expressionless face, so it was naturally impossible to forget. Arbor glanced at him. "How much foundation do you have in making talismans?" The Taoist said with a bitter face, "I don't have much of a foundation. When I was young, my master taught me for a while. But I don't know if it's because my aptitude is too low, but I can't learn most of it." Arbor shook his head. "You can't learn it because your late master didn't teach you all the talismans he taught you. What you've learned are incomplete talisman techniques. I've met you 3 times since I was young. It could be considered fate." Arbor waved her hand, and a thin book fell into the Taoist's hand. This is a part of the most basic talisman drawing methods for defense talismans, attack talismans, and body immobilization talismans. After you learn it, it shouldn't be much of a problem for you to deal with ordinary mid-level ghost spirits. In the future, you won't have to put on such an awkward act to make a living. The Taoist priest's mind was slightly agitated as he picked up the book and flipped through 2 pages. When he looked up again, he saw that the little stoic and the red-clothed man had walked far away, hand in hand. The Taoist priest hastily chased after them and repeatedly exclaimed, "Miss Master, many thanks." At this time, the Taoist priest still didn't know what kind of earth-shaking changes this thin book would cause his life to undergo in the future. "I'm not going to sleep until I'm full." Chapter 2253. It seems like it's snowing a little again. Arbor reached out to catch a sparkling snowflake and looked up at Yin. And he held her little hand and took out a green paper umbrella from his inner world with his other hand to cover the 2 of them. He looked down at her and asked with a smile, "Are you cold?" "Not cold at all." Good. My JoJo's body is the best." Yin squeezed her little hand and stopped in front of shop. "Do you want to go in and take a look?" Arbor looked up. The shop had a gold-plated signboard that said Talisman Shop, and it was crowded with people inside. The little fellow's interest was piqued. She had always wanted to know what the talisman crafting standards of each realm were like. Back on Seacone Planet, only Mu Jingrue from a talisman patrician family caught her eye when it came to talisman crafting. Forget about the others. The little fellow excitedly walked in front, her little hand tightly holding onto Mo Lien, who was following behind her. The crown prince slowly caught up. He slowly turned his head and glanced at the street corner. A severe glint flitted through his phoenix eyes. People came and went in the talisman shop. The buyers who passed by Arbor and Mo Lien, holding an exquisite little box, all had joyful expressions on their faces. Mo Lien reached out to pull down the little fellow's hat and took off her cloak, revealing a delicate little face. A delicate little face was revealed. It was fair and tender, and a pair of round eyes were looking at him. Phew, she's getting more and more beautiful. He still remembered the first time they met. The 7-year-old child was as skinny as a 5- or 6-year-old bean sprout. Under the nurturing of the sun, this little flower was quietly blooming in a graceful manner. He caressed her little face and smiled at her with slightly curved phoenix eyes. For a moment, the buyers who came and went in the shop were all attracted by the two's elegant demeanor. Until a yellow-gray defensive talisman array, everyone quickly come over and take a look. A shout came down from the railing on the second floor. The numerous buyers on the first floor raised their heads and looked over, only to see 128 yellow talisman papers arranged in front of the shop assistant, forming a defensive talisman array. This kind of defensive glyph formation can withstand attacks below the 4th level of the spirit realm for at least 5 minutes. This set of defensive array glyphs can be used more than 3 times, until the talisman force completely disappeared. What is everyone hesitating for? The starting price is 8,000 spirit coins, and each increment is 100 spirit coins. If you want to buy it, you can start now. 8,100, 8,200, 8,500. Everyone raised their heads and pointed, whispering to each other. There was obvious excitement on their faces. Arbor was speechless as he looked at the defensive rune array made of yellow talisman paper. Was this the difference? Most of the talismans on the market were talisman papers. Even ebony talismans were rare. No, it should be said that he had never seen it before. Although jade talismans are rare, I've seen them once or twice. Could it be that the people of this world don't know about ebony when they craft talismans? Arbor felt that it was a bit laughable as he watched them fight over this set of defensive talisman arrays that were of little value. A yellow-gray defensive talisman array made of 128 yellow talismans could only defend for 5 minutes? What kind of joke was this? This set of defensive talisman arrays was made by Master Jianghong. That's amazing. I heard that the master worked his heart out for 3 months and finally completed the drawing of this set of talisman arrays. Xiaomu only felt like a huge rock was crushing her small head to death. Chapter 2254. 3 months? They only drew a set of defensive glyph arrays. My God. Emolian lowered her head to look at the little girl's shocked expression and couldn't help but want to laugh. What's wrong? They drew a set of defensive glyph arrays in 3 months? She couldn't continue living like this. Jojo, you're so shocked that you're stuttering. Emolian's mouth twitched. You didn't eat or drink for 3 months just to draw a set of defensive glyph arrays. Yu, how can you talk about making money? You'll starve to death. This is the normal speed of a glyph master. Emolian pulled her to her side and rubbed her little hand to comfort her. She gave her a small look. Baby, you must not tell anyone about your glyph crafting speed. She was so afraid that this stupid child would blurt it out. Even if she didn't get beaten to death by the glyph masters, she would inevitably be spat to death. The most frightening thing was that glyph masters were already very few in number, and no one wished for them to be angered to death by others. Miss Xiao's face was expressionless, but her heart was crumbling. Heavens, these people are dawdling. A set of 128 glyph arrays actually took 3 months. If they relied on glyph arrays to kill people, it would really be too late. 10,000 spirit coins. This sir has bid 10,000 spirit coins. Is there a higher bid? 10,000 spirit coins, currently 10,000. Defensive glyph arrays couldn't be sold for too high a price, probably because it had a useless 5-minute defense function that, moreover, it could only be used 3 times. 3,000 spirit coins each time was really not something an ordinary person could afford. Many people retreated when they saw the high price of 10,000 spirit coins. Most of the people gathered there to watch the show, and there were only a few who would actually bid. 20,000. I request to see Grandmaster Jiang Hong. As a gust of cold air forced in, everyone looked back and saw a tall figure wearing a black cloak blocking the sunlight in front of the door. 20,000. The seller's eyes lit up, and he said with a smile, "You must be an instructor of Jiqing Academy's Fire Spirit Department." Noticing his clothes and the flame symbol on his chest, the shop assistant hurriedly smiled fawningly. "Is there anyone who bids higher than an instructor of Jiqing Academy?" 20,000 once. 20,000 going twice. 20,000 going thrice. The audience gasped. Excellent Qing Academy was truly powerful. One of the fire spirit instructors could take out 20,000 to buy a defensive glyph array without batting an eye. For ordinary people like them, it would be considered good if they could save up to 4,000 to 5,000 spirit coins in their lifetime. Not to mention 20,000 spirit coins. It was almost impossible. "I heard that someone wants to see me." Sun Yang appeared in front of the railing on the second floor. The woman smiled coquettishly and reached out to hold the railing. "Are you that Charmaster?" The sturdy man smiled and said, "Master, are you interested in joining our academy? All conditions can be discussed with our dean." "Oh, is Jiaqing Academy going to establish the #1 Talisman Master School in the 6 prefectures continent?" The instructor of the Fire Spirit faculty smiled and did not say anything for a few seconds. Then, he said, "If you are willing to come with me, all your questions will naturally be answered." "She's not a master. She's a liar." A commotion broke out at the door. The sound of footsteps was chaotic. A young boy with wounds all over his body, whose face could not be seen, staggered out from the back. "You dare to run, brat? Make up for yesterday's edition. Continue at night." Chapter 2255. She's a liar. She's not a talisman master at all. She's a damned liar from head to toe. She didn't draw this talisman array at all. While the young man was yelling with all his might, several burly men chased after him and held his hands down. "Get lost!" The young man roared and subconsciously threw out 2 intermediate yellow attack talismans into the bodies of the burly men. 2 of the burly men were caught off guard and were hit by the yellow talismans. Their bodies swayed, and they slightly retreated several steps. "Damn brat!" The eyes of a burly man with a black cloth wrapped around his head flashed, and he pounced at the young man with all his might. "You're courting death, brat. You're all accomplices." The short young man angrily roared. This Master Jiang Hong tricked 5 or 6 young talisman masters into going to her private court. She claimed that she had a defensive talisman remnant scroll to share with us, and taught us how to make yellow, ranked defensive talismans for free. In reality, she imprisoned us in that court. We made defensive talismans for free. She took all of the defensive talismans we drew for herself. Huh. Jiang Hong crossed her arms and stood in front of the railing on the second floor. She looked at the young man in tattered clothes with an aloof expression. "What kind of joke are you making? Just you? I need you to draw a yellow ranked defensive talisman array?" "Ah ha ha ha." Jiang Hong looked at him coldly and said word by word, "You're only a small intermediate talisman master. What right do you have to accuse others that you can draw yellow ranked talismans? Do you think anyone in the world can draw yellow ranked defensive talismans?" "Ah ha ha ha." Jiang Hong's tone was frivolous, and she laughed very viciously. The rest of the people heard her reasonable words and nodded one after another. "That's right. You can't just go around biting people like that, can you? What proof do you have for your words?" The young man was in a sorry state, and his face was bruised. He couldn't help but tightly clench his fists. "I'm telling the truth. This woman, she used a secret technique to temporarily raise us. But that secret technique is extremely harmful to our bodies. After a month, all of us will temporarily lose the ability to draw talismans. Yes, I am an intermediate symbol master. But above the 6 prefectures, how many yellow grade symbol masters were there? This woman is also not a yellow grade symbol master. Everyone looked at each other and couldn't help but understand what the young boy was saying. Jiang Hong, on the other hand, was somewhat angry out of humiliation. A trace of anger flashed across her enchanting face. Nonsense. Drag this guy away. If you have the guts, then craft a yellow talisman in front of me. Don't pull me. You evil people will get your retribution. The instructor from Ani Prefecture's Jiaqing Academy couldn't help but frown. Seeing that the young man was about to be dragged out of the door by a few burly men, the young man suddenly stopped. Xiaomu stretched out her calf and kicked forcefully from behind a burly man. Everyone watched as the man flew out of the door like a ball. The remaining men suddenly turned their heads. When their gazes fell on Arbor, they couldn't help but be startled. "Young miss, what are you doing?" Before he could finish speaking, he saw the young girl lift her leg and kick another man's leg. Everyone only heard a crisp "Kacha" sound. Chapter 2256. The iron tower-like man's leg was broken by the little girl's kick. "Hello!" The man let out a roar and fell to the ground. The little girl glanced at him expressionlessly and frowned. She stretched out her little hand and grabbed at the air, pulling the confused and nervous little boy in front of her. You, what are you doing?" The boy looked to be only 13 or 14 years old. His face was bruised. Previously, she couldn't distinguish his face from a distance and didn't know he was so young. A 13 or 14-year-old intermediate talisman master. Arbor thought this boy had a promising future. Talisman masters mainly relied on their own talisman power to make talismans. The level of talisman power affected the level of the talisman drawn. For example, Arbor could see that at least intermediate talisman power flowed in the boy's body. He was indeed an intermediate talisman master. However, at this moment that Arbor looked at the black gas between the boy's eyebrows and couldn't help but frown. Could it be that this grandmaster, Jiang Hong, used a forbidden talisman spell to forcibly raise the level of their talisman power? Now that the power of the forbidden talisman had disappeared, the remaining trace was harmful to the body. If it wasn't removed as soon as possible, it would greatly affect the development of their own talisman power in the future. A group of ignorant fools, thinking that someone used a secret technique to help them raise their level? In the end, it was only a talisman spell. Arbor secretly took out a purifying talisman and gently waved it between his fingers. A stream of light, carrying the purifying talisman power, instantly drilled into the boy's forehead and completely swallowed the black gas. The boy was startled. Although he didn't know what had happened, his spiritual sense was clear in an instant. It seemed like there was a bit of talisman power wandering in his body. He suddenly felt it. "Hey, what are you waiting for?" Arbor tilted his head and looked at the boy. "Draw an intermediate defensive talisman for me to see." Jiang Hong was so angry that her face turned green. She pointed at Arbor and said angrily, "What are you waiting for? Drive them out together." Could anyone really behave atrociously in front of her? Jiang Hong? She was a rarely seen yellow grade great symbol master. He should be respected by everyone, not criticized and cursed. Under Jiang Hong's instructions, several of the shop's employees also fiercely ran towards Arbor's group. However, before he could get close to Arbor, Imo Yin flicked her finger and shot out a few streams of energy. The few workers rolled on the ground and couldn't get up for a long time. Arbor leisurely looked at the surprised youth. "Hey, what are you waiting for? Hurry up." "Oh, yes." The young boy nodded hurriedly. Then he turned his gaze and fell on the short table beside the staircase on the first floor. He hurriedly ran a few steps forward to the short table, took the ready-made blank talisman paper and talisman brush, and began to draw with a devout expression. Based on his posture, it was obvious that he knew how to draw talismans. After a quarter of an hour, the store was completely silent. Arbor was speechless as he looked at the young man who was still concentrating on drawing talismans. Another half an hour passed. That guy actually hadn't finished drawing a simple intermediate defensive talisman. Arbor only felt black lines on his forehead. He was thunderstruck. With his speed, not to mention going out to fight, Even if he was given 3 days to prepare, he wouldn't be able to prepare more than a few attack talismans. Chapter 2257. With such a lousy speed, not to mention that Miss Chiao wouldn't fancy him, any random person probably wouldn't fancy him either. A round of applause suddenly sounded in the main hall. This little brother is too amazing. He can actually concentrate on drawing talismans in front of us. My heavens, look at how steady this little brother's hands are. I'm guessing that he'll finish drawing talismans in a while. Amazing, amazing. His talisman success rate is really high. It's said that it's very rare to succeed in one try. Everyone's praises fell into Arbor's ears, causing her to have a strange expression, not knowing what to say. Wasn't this a very normal talisman drawing? What was there to praise? Emolien lowered his head to look at his little wife's stupefied expression and couldn't help but secretly find it funny. He raised his hand to squeeze her little hand and whispered in her ear, "Jojo thinks that this talisman drawing fellow is pretty good?" Arbor nodded. If he's properly groomed in the future, he'll definitely become a capable person. Most importantly, she had never seen a talisman master who could draw talismans properly in all her life. When she grew up in the future, she would also need someone to support her. For example, a group of apothecaries and talisman masters, so that everyone could fight together, right? How tiring it would be for her to do it all by herself. Prince Emo instantly understood the little fellow's meaning. Smiling at her with his phoenix eyes, he nodded and stroked her head. My Jojo is starting to grow quickly. This little fellow had the intention to nurture her own power. How great was that? Miss Chiao's eyes brightened. You also think that it's good to keep this fellow? Prince Emo looked at the youth with disdain and nodded reluctantly. Although he's a rookie, if he's properly groomed, it's not like he can't be used. Arbor nodded her little head and turned to look at the youth who was still drawing talismans in front of the table. Although this fellow's talisman drawing speed wasn't on the same level as hers, his attitude when drawing talismans was rather strict and serious. He was a talent worth grooming. Arbor, with his 2 small hands behind his back, trotted all the way to the young boy's side and carefully watched him draw the talisman there. Jiang Hong, who was standing on the 2nd floor, was so angry that she was about to explode. She turned her head and pressured the shopkeeper of the talisman shop. Are you going to allow these people to behave atrociously here? If you don't chase them out, I'll cut off your stock. When the shopkeeper of the talisman shop heard this, he immediately became anxious. How could he let Jiang Hong run out of stock? The defensive talismans and offensive talismans that Jiang Hong made were all high level and above. Even the yellow level talismans were usually sold very well. If he really angered Jiang Hong, she would no longer sell here in the future. That would be a huge loss. Thinking of this, the shopkeeper hurriedly waved his hand and shouted, "Hurry up and kick out those irrelevant people who allowed them to wantonly use my blank talisman paper and talisman brush to draw talismans on the spot. Throw out that brat who doesn't know how high the heavens are." And them. When the shopkeeper pointed at Arbor and Emolien, he looked at their outstanding appearances and was clearly stunned. Then he clenched his teeth and steeled his heart. Kick out those troublemakers as well. The shopkeeper gave the order, but the shop assistants didn't move at all. Instead, there were people lying on the ground, groaning and groaning, holding their waists and touching their backs as they rolled back and forth on the ground. The shopkeeper's eyes were about to pop out. Chapter 2258. Who the hell was going to kick out who? The shop assistants who could still fight and move were all lying on the ground at this time. Not to mention kicking people out, even their ability to take care of themselves was questionable. The shopkeeper looked at the shop assistants lying on the ground and secretly cursed. His heart was about to explode. Who was the unluckiest when the shop assistants were injured? Wasn't him the shopkeeper. When the time came, he would have to fork out money and effort. If he didn't handle it well, the shop assistants' families might come and make trouble. Just thinking about it gave the shopkeeper a headache. However, he could not provide for Jiang Hong, that great aunt. The shopkeeper hurriedly walked down from the 2nd floor in 3 steps. With a drooling face, he arrived in front of Arbor and Emolien. He rubbed his hands and smiled obsequiously. The two of you. How should I address the two of you? Emolien proudly raised her head. Arbor naturally wouldn't pay attention to his nonsense. Seeing that the two of them ignored him, the shopkeeper could only continue to smile obsequiously. This small shop only does small business. We can't afford a disturbance. If the two of you aren't sincerely here to buy talismans, please. Slap. Arbor took out a blue talisman and threw it at the old man's face. This was outrageous. This ignorant old man actually dared to drive her husband away. He really ate a bear's heart and a leopard's gall. Originally, she only came to watch the fun and didn't want to sell talismans. However, she changed her mind now. What right did this group of people have to be so arrogant in front of her? Wasn't it just a yellow-level, defense-breaking talisman array? What was there to be fussy about? Nowadays, she directly used jade talismans to make defensive talisman arrays, not talisman paper. The shopkeeper was dumbfounded as he held the blue defensive talisman fluttering down. His hands couldn't help but slightly tremble. It was a yellow-level talisman. The quality was actually fine. A fine blue talisman. She had guarded this shop for so many years, but rarely had she seen such a rare, fine blue talisman. Generally, if a great talisman master made a fine blue talisman, they would first use it for themselves or their family. Why would they take it out to sell? Talisman making was very taxing on one's mind, and the success rate was so low that it made one's hair stand on end. Without spending a few days, how could he successfully craft a blue talisman? Annie, may I know what this blue defensive talisman is for? The shopkeeper's voice was trembling with excitement. Sell. Arbor took out 2 more blue storage talismans and slapped them onto the shopkeeper's face. 2 storage talismans for sale. 10,000 spirit coins for 1. There's no upper limit. Let's bid. Emolien grinned as he leaned closer to his wifey. Jojo was awesome. It was obvious that she was standing up for her husband. The talisman store that had been silent for a while suddenly emitted waves of gasps, and everyone was excited to the point of being unable to control themselves. Everyone started screaming at the same time. Storage talisman? Is that really the legendary storage talisman? Oh my god, this is the first time I've seen a storage talisman on the market. Ah, this lady. What girl? She's a master. All right. Master, can you tell us how big the storage space is in this talisman? Everyone stared at the talisman with excitement, and their eyes eagerly looked at Arbor. Arbor said expressionlessly, a yellow-level blue storage talisman can store 30 cubic meters of things, including living things. It can be stored and unloaded 1,000 times. At the same time, everyone revealed a frightened expression. I'm sleeping soundly. I'll wake up early tomorrow to catch up on you guys. Chapter 2259. 30 to 30 cubic meters. And it could store living things? 1,000 uses? This was too much. Such a practical storage glyph naturally made everyone's eyes light up, and they couldn't help but be eager to give it a try. If the defensive glyph formation just now was said to be of little value, then the storage glyph that the little girl had taken out was simply too delightful. The fire spirit instructor from Jiqing Academy also couldn't help but be moved. He stepped forward and said, 11,000, I want a storage glyph. The shopkeeper couldn't help but feel excited as he hurriedly said to Miss Qiao, Little Master, may I ask what the effects of this defensive glyph are? It can withstand the full force attacks of 2 spirit masters below the 7th level for an hour. It can be used more than 10 times. Arbor said faintly. Everyone was immediately dumbfounded. In particular, the fire spirit instructor from Jiqing Academy, who'd just spent a large sum of 20,000 to purchase the defensive glyph formation, couldn't help but feel awkward. He'd forked out a large sum of money and wanted to recruit Master Jiang Hong for the academy. But it couldn't even compare to a single hair on the little master's head. She only had a yellow rank defensive glyph, but its effects could last for an hour. And the glyph formation formed from the 128 defensive glyph formations he'd purchased earlier could only hold out for 5 minutes, and it could only withstand attacks from those below the 4th level of the spirit realm. The other person could use it 3 times more than her. This was truly the case. Comparisons were odious, and comparisons were odious. This little girl whose strength was comparable to a glyph master at such a young age was truly too astounding. Arbor flicked a glance at the dumbfounded shopkeeper and roared impatiently, "Are you bidding or not?" The shopkeeper immediately came back to his senses and nodded repeatedly. "Yes, yes. Yes, 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 yes." Everyone heard that, right? The starting price of these 3 glyph formations is 10,000 each. Let's all make our bids. The shopkeeper was stuttering, and it was obvious how agitated he was. What didn't disappoint him was that after he'd spoken, everyone indeed began to raise the price in a frenzy. The first bid was for the blue storage glyph. The Fire Spear instructor from Jiqing Academy finally managed to snatch one up at a price of 100,000 spirit coins. The fight for the second storage talisman was even more intense. In the end, a wealthy family bought it for 150,000 spirit coins. The defensive talisman was sold for a high price of 90,000. According to the rules, the talisman shop would take a 2% commission. The shopkeeper's income from the commission alone was several thousand spirit coins. Furthermore, after the news of the storage talisman spread, the reputation of this talisman store naturally rose steadily. At this moment, the shopkeeper's expression had completely changed. He gazed amiably at Xiao Mu and asked in a fawning manner, "Little master, may I ask if you're interested in discussing business with me?" Arbor glanced at him and reached out to take the spirit coin card from him, stuffing it into his inner world. "I'm just passing by. Don't think too much. It was just that when they saw this fellow's attitude towards them earlier, they wanted to take him down a notch. Don't think that I don't have a temper." The shopkeeper's elderly face immediately crumbled, and he followed Xiao Mu blindly, repeatedly saying, "Just now, this one was blind and didn't recognize the little master. If the young master is willing to give us a blue storage glyph every 3 months, the price is negotiable. Feel free to ask for whatever treatment you want." Chapter 2260. Arbor held Prince Mo's hand and walked towards the young boy. At this moment, the young boy finally finished drawing a mid-level defensive talisman. Arbor took it and looked at it. She felt that this child's basic skills were a bit good, but his talisman drawing technique was too stiff. His fatal flaw was his speed, which was too slow. In a battle, he had no chance of winning at this speed. Arbor glanced at him. "What's your name?" By now, the young boy already knew that Arbor had just sold storage talismans. He stared at her with eyes full of worship and stammered, "And my name is Zohuan." Arbor nodded and asked bluntly, "Your foundation in talisman techniques is pretty good. With proper training, you should be able to become a true yellow-level talisman master. Are you willing to?" Yes, yes, yes. I'm willing. Arbor couldn't help but be speechless. She hadn't finished speaking when the young boy couldn't wait to agree to her request. How could she endure this? Mo Yin glanced at the child and snorted, "Young boy, where's your modesty?" Zohuan, can modesty be eaten? Now, there was a great opportunity in front of him to learn from a true yellow-level great talisman master. Why wouldn't he agree? "Great master," Zohuan stammered. Why, you're a yellow-level great talisman master?" Arbor shook her head. A mocking laugh immediately came from the railing on the second floor. "Ha ha, she's the liar. She casually took out her master's talismans to sell. How could she be a yellow-level talisman master at this age? At most, she's just a mid-level talisman master like you." Zohuan stared blankly. Was it like this? Arbor expressionlessly looked at Jiang Hong, who was standing in front of the railing on the second floor. Her face was a bit distorted as she spoke. She calmly said, "I'm indeed not a yellow-level talisman master." Jiang Hong's face showed a trace of a mocking smile. "I'm a black-level talisman master." Jiang Hong's smile froze on her face. She almost reflexively screamed, "Impossible. What's impossible?" Arbor glanced at her indifferently. "You're not me. How would you know that I don't meet the requirements to be a black-grade symbol master?" Zohuan's heart leaped with joy. She cried out in surprise, "Master, you're a black-grade talisman master." Therefore, the yellow-level talismans that this master took out to sell were just things that she didn't want. Everyone else could make black-grade storage talismans now, right? That yellow-level talisman was basically useless to her. Jiang Hong's face suddenly turned green, red, and white. She felt that her heart was about to be unable to bear it and started to twitch. She had worked hard for 44 years, but in the end, she had only just stepped into the advanced talisman master proficiency realm. He would need to use talismans that increase talisman power to forcefully make a few yellow-level talismans. However, this little girl in front of him actually boasted shamelessly that she was a black-level symbol master. Ha ha ha! Wasn't this the biggest joke in the world? She was so good at boasting at such a young age. Jiang Hong's expression contained traces of ridicule and harshness. Will you die if you don't boast? Jiang Hong sneered. You say that you're a black-grade great talisman master, but what proof do you have? Unless you can draw a black-grade talisman on the spot, don't boast as if you're above heaven and earth. Chapter 2261. Arbor looked at the girl whose expression changed drastically and said indifferently, I don't need to prove anything to you. The truth was as such. Miss Qiao was merely calmly stating a fact. As for whether others believed it or not, that was completely unrelated to her. She also didn't need to craft a black-grade talisman in front of others just to prove herself. Stop right there. Seeing the little girl ignoring her like this, Jiang Hong's pretty face flushed red with anger. You don't dare to accept the challenge? Or perhaps you're simply a liar. Jiang Hong sneered and said, Seeing that you're still young, I might as well give you a piece of advice. Don't boast too much in front of others in the future, so as to avoid embarrassing yourself. Arbor swept a glance at her and asked expressionlessly, What? You want to challenge me? Jiang Hong was naturally unwilling to challenge an opponent whose strength was unknown. But for some reason, when she saw the girl's stoic face and calm expression, she felt a burst of anger in her heart. And for no reason at all, she felt the anger in her heart rush up for no reason. So what if I challenge you? Jiang Hong said angrily. Do you dare to accept the challenge? Accept the challenge? Arbor shook her head. You don't have the qualifications to challenge me. If you really want to compete, I'll give you a few pointers. Everyone, that Prince Mo, whose hand was held by the little fellow, couldn't help but curl his lips when he heard this. He knew the little fellow's talisman crafting ability, so in his eyes, his Qiao was extremely interesting. However, in Jiang Hong's opinion, Arbor's attitude could simply be described as domineering. Such a young girl actually said that she didn't have the qualifications to challenge her, and even wanted to give her a few pointers. Ha ha ha. Jiang Hong's eyes darkened as she sneered. Fine, fine, fine. I'll give you a chance to give me some pointers. At that time, who knew who would be giving pointers? Arbor glanced at her. Seeing that she was suppressing a trace of anger, she couldn't help but frown and look at her. How do you want to compete? This woman was super strange. She was clearly speaking the truth, but in that woman's ears, it sounded like she was lying. With her talisman crafting ability, why would she need to lie? Arbor was a little angry. He lowered his eyebrows, and when he raised his head again, his eyes were calm and unperturbed. We'll set a time limit of 2 hours. Whoever is the first to craft a yellow rank body securing talisman will be the winner. Too long, Arbor said coldly. What? It's been too long. I don't have that much time to waste on you. You. Jiang Hong was about to explode from anger. She was so angry that she was about to collapse. She glared at Arbor as if she was looking at an enemy. This attitude was too arrogant. She actually said that making a yellow rank body securing talisman in 2 hours was a time-consuming matter. You're already very lucky to be able to craft a yellow rank body securing talisman within 2 hours, all right? There was a success rate in drawing talismans. Normally, if a person could successfully draw 1 out of 3 talismans, they would be considered to be extremely talented. There were even those who weren't skilled enough. When they were unfamiliar with it, they might only succeed in 2 out of 10 that if it was a fine grade blue talisman. Due to the difference in quality, the success rate was only about 1/10 of the yellow rank talisman. It was so low that it made one's hair stand up in anger. Arbor had a puzzled expression. I read from a book that normal people could draw about 10 fine gray blue talismans in a day. What he meant was, why is it that when it comes to you, you can only draw one yellow rank talisman in 2 hours? Chapter 2262. This was too much of a scam. If you need 2 hours to make a yellow talisman, wouldn't you need a few days to make a blue talisman? Jiang Hong's face flushed red with anger. The expression on her face completely distorted. You, shameless boasting. She angrily rebuked. Don't tell me you've never read any proper talisman books. Let me ask you, have you ever been tested at the Talisman Master Guild? This Xiao had never even heard of the Talisman Master Guild. After the little fellow grew up, she had never even tested at the Pill House, let alone the Talisman Master Guild. Now that she heard it, it sounded like a fantasy story. She said with a blank expression, Talisman Master Guild? Ha 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 ha. Jiang Hong proudly laughed. Then you still call yourself a black-level Talisman Master? Your black-level Talisman Master title is self-proclaimed right. She pointed at the round badge she wore on her chest. Do you see it? This is the Talisman Master Guild's badge. The Talisman Master Guild uses an attack talisman and a defense talisman as its symbol. My badge has the word yellow on it, which means that I'm a yellow-level Talisman Master. What about you? Jiang Hong felt that it was somewhat childish for her to be angry with a little girl at her age. But today's matter, she didn't want to let it go. It was too infuriating. She was despised by a young fellow who didn't have a Talisman Master rank at all, and even said that she wasn't qualified to fight with her. No one would be able to endure such words. She wanted to slap her face in front of everyone. She wanted everyone to see that this little girl in front of her was an out-and-out liar. Arbor looked at her chest suspiciously. Jiang Hong purposely puffed out her chest, revealing the unique round badge in front of everyone. The people in the hall also looked at each other suspiciously, their gazes converging on Arbor. That's right, this Grandmaster Jiang Hong was indeed a yellow-level Talisman Master. This badge was guaranteed to be genuine. It was produced by the Talisman Master Guild, so it definitely couldn't be wrong. On the contrary, this little girl claimed to be a black-level Talisman Master, but she didn't have any proof, not even a single badge of the Talisman Master Guild. So much so that he might not even have heard of the 3 words Symbol Master Guild. Where did this little girl come from? According to the Golden Talisman Jade Tome, an ordinary person could make about 10 blue talismans in a day. Therefore, she felt that being able to draw more than 400 blue talismans in one night was already very outstanding. Could it be that the ordinary person mentioned in the Golden Talisman Jade Tome wasn't an ordinary person, but a talisman master whose talent surpassed others by more than 95%? Less than 8 hours a night. In other words, when Miss Xiao's hand speed was still decent, she could probably draw 100 talismans in 2 hours. This was a very normal speed for her. If she hit on the fish orchid planet, the time flow there was 12 times faster, and she could summon 2 clones to slack off, the number of talismans drawn in 2 hours would reach a terrifying amount of 4,000. Therefore, Miss Xiao felt that it was better to draw talismans by hand to cultivate one's sentiments. If he wasn't in combat mode, there was no need to summon his doppelgangers. If he were to draw 10 to 20 pieces every day, he would inevitably become rusty in the future. If he freaking finished drawing 10,000 jade talismans in one go, what business would she have in the future? No wonder her husband kept nagging her not to tell others about her talisman crafting speed. Work report. I've finished yesterday's report. See you tonight. Try to be early today. Oh, happy National Day. Chapter 2263. Xiao Mu glanced at Jiang Hong, who was seething with anger and could not figure out what the other party was angry about. Didn't she just say that drawing a yellow talisman in 2 hours was too time-consuming? She probably hit a sore spot in this Master Jiang Hong, didn't she? All right, Arbor nodded reluctantly. 2 hours it is. When the time came, she would quickly draw it, and the winner would be decided after she finished drawing it. There was no need to argue with others now. It was too troublesome to even say a few words. Jiang Hong said with a sullen face, since it's a competition, we naturally have to bring out some prizes. With that, She took out 24 jade talismans from her sleeve and suddenly injected spiritual energy into them, causing them to light up. Everyone let out an uproar. Jiang Hong ignored everyone's scorching gazes and said indifferently, "This set of 24 jade talismans forms a yellow-ranked defensive talisman array, which is completely different from the talisman paper defensive talisman array from before. It's a jade talisman." Everyone's gazes fell on the jade talisman array, almost burning up. The jade talisman array can be used for a lifetime. As long as this set of jade talisman arrays is not destroyed, you only need to go to the Talisman Master Association and let the Talisman Masters inject their talisman energy regularly, and it can be used for a long time. When this was said, the whole place was filled with gasps of surprise. The Jiaqing Academy's Fire Spirit Major Instructor's gaze also burned. "Is this set of jade talisman arrays for sale? This is my prize," Jiang Hong said with a proud expression. Unexpectedly, Arbor's face was full of disdain, and he waved his little hand forcefully. "No, change the prize. Everyone, why do they suddenly want to beat this little girl to death?" Mo Lien chuckled softly, his gaze only landing on his little wife. He looked at her with a smile, so focused that it seemed as if time would stop for her. The Fire Spirit Major Instructor suddenly took out a pair of fiery red stones from his inner world and waved them in front of Arbor. "How about this set of talisman arrays for my pair of Dragon Tooth Souls?" Although the Dragon Tooth Soul is a divine-level material that can greatly improve the speed of a divine artifact's attack, 2 Dragon Tooth Souls can't do much. Mo Lien shook his head and said seriously, "Your overall value is not as good as their jade talisman arrays. It's a loss." "That's something else." The instructor of the Fire Spirit faculty was obviously stunned. Naturally, he didn't expect that there would be someone who knew the ropes here. He really coveted that set of jade talisman arrays. After thinking about it, he could only grit his teeth and say, "All right, then I'll add 2 more of these. What do you think?" The instructor then took out 2 palm-sized jades that were overflowing with light. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what it was. Mo Lien raised his eyebrows slightly, his handsome face indifferent as he said, "These 2 pieces of broken jade don't look too bad. It's just that I don't know what it is. I'll only know after I use it. I'll reluctantly accept it." When the instructor took out the 2 pieces of jade, he had been paying attention to Mo Lien's expression. Seeing that his expression didn't change and his mouth spat out such words, she couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He had found these 2 items many years ago when he was training in the depths of the Nameless Mountain Range. The danger level had caused the entire training team to be wiped out except for him. But all these years, these 2 items had always been in his hands, and he couldn't sell them at all. Those who saw these 2 pieces of jade would be mesmerized by their appearance at first, but after the brilliance on the jade quickly faded, no one knew what these 2 items were, so no one had ever taken them. Chapter 2264. The excellent Qing Academy's Fire Spirit Instructor hesitated for a moment, but still couldn't help but ask, "You really don't know what this is?" Mo Lien examined it for a while with a face full of confusion. "It looks like a high-grade material, but it doesn't look like one when you look at it carefully. Hey, the light on it has faded." Someone beside them couldn't help but cry out. After the light faded, these 2 pieces of jade looked no different from the most ordinary jade on the market. They looked just like goods from a street stall. Everyone shook their heads, pointing at the 2 pieces of jade and whispering. Mo Lien frowned and asked, "Are there any other substitutes? These 2 broken stones of yours probably aren't high-grade materials at all." "Nonsense." The Fire Spirit Instructor couldn't help but say angrily, "These 2 pieces of jade were clearly dug out from the depths of the Nameless Mountain Range. That won't do. You don't even know what these stones are." Mo Lien shook her head and said, "It's too much of a loss to exchange them like this. You have to add something else." The Fire Spirit Instructor couldn't help but feel a bit stifled, but that jade talisman array was really too attractive to him. Gritting his teeth, he could only take out a black stone from his inner world. "Then how about this limitless glass stone?" Mo Lien nodded and said with a slight frown, "The limitless glass stone is only a heaven-grade material. After polishing it and embedding it into a spirit artifact, it's not bad. It can speed up the absorption of heaven and earth's spiritual energy. But if it's used to forge a divine artifact, it's a bit lacking. Forget it, we'll just exchange it like this. Prince Mo's expression of, "You've really gotten off too easy," really made the fire spirit instructor a bit depressed. On the other hand, Jiang Hong, who was standing on the side, couldn't resist laughing out of anger. She eyed Mo Yin and Xiao Mu covetously, and the first thing she said was sharp and sarcastic. "It's as if you'll definitely win this wager." They actually immediately took out the prize she took out in front of the original owner and decided to exchange it with someone else. Wasn't this a joke? This couple, Mo Yin glanced at Jiang Hong unconcernedly and said with a confident expression, "If you were as good at talisman crafting as my wife, you would also be so confident." Jiang Hong hated that she couldn't open her mouth and cursed this couple to death. Both of them were so hateful. However, while Jiang Hong was fuming, someone with a keen sense of smell was already staring at Prince Mo with burning gazes. This little big brother, opening his mouth and saying that he's so knowledgeable about artifact refinement. One look, and I can tell he's an understanding person. T.S. Some people wanted to make a move. They wanted to go to the couple's side. They wanted to get close to the couple. Rights, or their T.S. S long, T's, A's a moment. T have A's, T. It's anyway, it won't take much time. It's really troublesome to go up and down the stairs. Arbor's disdainful attitude completely angered Jiang Hong. Blood rushed to her head, and she furiously stormed down the first floor's lobby. She opened her hand and said to the surrounding buyers who were watching the show, "Everyone, today I, Jiang Hong, am here with this little grand master. Please be my witness for the competition." Jiang Hong purposely emphasized the little master. Even a fool could feel the sarcasm in her tone. Chapter 2265. The young master, Miss Xiao, stood in front of Jiang Hong with her hands clasped behind her back. She expressionlessly looked at the angry woman. "Allow me to be the judge for the two of you." At this moment, an old man with white hair and a beard walked forward with a smile and cupped his hands in salute. "Oh, isn't this the famous Elder Song of Oni Prefecture?" Yes. Elder Song is over 70 years old, but his talisman crafting skills are second to none in our Oni Prefecture. I heard that Elder Song is already a peak black level talisman master. He's only a small step away from breaking through to talisman master. Earth level? Yes. He's about to break through to Earth level. Everyone looked at the old talisman master with reverence. The old man was also very benevolent. He nodded at everyone who saluted him with a kind smile. When Jiang Hong saw the old talisman master, she didn't dare to act rashly. She respectfully saluted the old talisman master. "Thank you for your trouble, Elder Song." Xiaomu thanked him and then sat down at two small tables with Jiang Hong, one on the left and one on the right. Talisman masters brought their own talisman brushes and cinnabar. Arbor and Jiang Hong were no exception. They each took out their own talisman brushes, picked up a piece of talisman paper from the table, and started to draw. In order to appear less special, Arbor specially prepared a cinnabar and pretended to dip it in. In fact, her talisman brushes never needed cinnabar. When the talisman drawing began, everyone held their breaths and looked at the two talisman masters in front of them with shining eyes. Jiang Hong was over 40 years old and had drawn countless talismans. There is no doubt about her proficiency in talisman drawing. However, the red-clothed little girl sitting on the left was even more extraordinary. She was so young, but she was calm from beginning to end. She didn't even care that she was drawing talismans in front of everyone. When she picked up the talisman brush to draw talismans, her hand speed was so smooth that it was done in one stroke. Everyone stared blankly at the young master as she put away her talisman brush. They looked at each other and saw the stupefied expression on each other's faces. What was going on? Is the little master done drawing? From the moment the young master sat down to the moment he started writing, to the moment he finished writing, did it even take 3 minutes? For Arbor, there was no need to pay attention to the quality of the talisman. The material was neither jade talisman nor ebony talisman. It was just a paper talisman. How much time could it take? She had already dipped the brush in cinnabar and rubbed it for a while. Once she moved the talisman brush, needless to say, even she herself couldn't control her speed. From the moment he started drawing the talisman to the moment he finished, it probably didn't even take a minute. Old Talisman Master Song was also completely stunned on the spot. He hurriedly walked over shakily and picked up the yellow level body, securing talisman that Arbor had drawn. After carefully examining it, he excitedly cried out, "Yellow level. One body securing talisman." Huh! The whole place was in an uproar. On the other side, Jiang Hong, who had just sat down, dipped the brush in cinnabar and started to draw the first rune line, clenched the hand holding the brush tightly. She raised her head with a twisted expression and exclaimed, "Impossible! How is this possible?" Mo Yin could not help but put her hand to her forehead. See, this matter was guaranteed to blow up. In less than half a day, it was estimated that the entire Ani prefecture would spread the news that a great talisman master with a hand speed of 3 minutes had appeared out of nowhere. Arbor had already stood up and glanced indifferently in Jiang Hong's direction. "I won. Put up your prize." Chapter 2266. This person was probably rushing to give her some good luck. "Impossible!" Jiang Hong shrieked. For a moment, her voice drowned out the excited shouts of everyone in the hall, causing the air to quieten down. Jiang Hong rushed in front of the old talisman master in 3 steps and snatched the yellow level body, securing talisman from his hands. She raised it high and roared, "Everyone, you have to take a good look. Look carefully. In my 44 years, I've never seen a talisman master who could create a yellow level immobilization talisman in 3 minutes. Everyone, use your brain and think carefully. Is this possible or not?" Jiang Hong said harshly, looking like she wanted to wake everyone up. She yelled at the top of her lungs, "She clearly cheated. She cheated." Jiang Hong shouted. She definitely drew a talisman in advance and stuffed it in her sleeve to replace it. Xiao Mu looked at her blankly, and it was quite a while before she said, "So many people are watching me draw talismans. How am I supposed to put on the talismans in my sleeve under everyone's watchful eyes?" "Don't tell me you're joking." Jiang Hong looked at her coldly. "Don't pretend. Everyone can search her sleeve. There's definitely a lot of immobilization talismans and defensive talismans hidden inside." Impudent. When Crown Prince Mo saw that there really were people approaching Xiao Mu wretchedly to conduct a body search, he angrily rebuked them and sent those 2 men harboring malicious intentions flying with a flick of his sleeve. Arbor raised her hand to stroke him to comfort him. She looked at Jiang Hong very calmly and said, "Just because you can't do it in this lifetime doesn't mean others can't." The young Zhou Huan heard this and nodded vigorously. "That's right. Just now, I didn't even blink. I was staring at the young master and watching her create talismans. She simply completed it in one go from starting to finishing. She didn't pause at all. She didn't even pull out her sleeve. You're clearly slandering her. You're jealous of her speed in creating talismans, so you're framing her for cheating." Zhou Huan's words were orderly and reasonable. Not only did the surrounding people agree, even the referee, old Talisman Master Song, couldn't help but nod. Zhou Huan looked very excited. In his 14 years of life, he'd really never seen someone who could actually draw talismans so smoothly and without the slightest pause. As expected, this black-grade, great talisman master was extremely formidable. He, Zhou Huan, must learn from her. After making up her mind, Zhou Huan did not take advantage of the chaos to speak. She just stood beside Mo Lien and Arbor and angrily reprimanded Jiang Hong. "Look at this." Arbor took out a blank talisman and waved it in front of her. He took out a talisman pen and stood there, casually writing and drawing a few times. This time, it really didn't even take 3 minutes before a yellow rank body, securing talisman, appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The old talisman master excitedly took it over and looked at it over and over as if he had found a treasure. He shouted, "Yellow grade, body securing talisman." Jiang Hong's eyes widened instantly. She felt that her head was probably going to smoke. Her entire person was somewhat delirious as she froze on the spot. She could only keep shouting, "Impossible! This is impossible!" Jiang Hong felt that she was about to go crazy. This time, she had personally witnessed the little girl draw a yellow rank body, securing talisman in a matter of minutes. Her brush strokes were as smooth as the clouds, and her free and easy appearance made her feel as if a venomous snake had coiled up in her heart, making her extremely jealous. She could only mutter the word impossible. Chapter 2267. No way, no way, no way. How could this young lady have such an abnormal speed to complete a yellow-gray body, securing talisman? Her gaze fell on her hand, and she shrieked in shock. Her brush. Talisman brush. There's something wrong with the talisman brush. This talisman brush can definitely speed up the rate of talisman formation. Arbor had already stored the talisman brush into his inner world. Hearing that, he raised his head and glanced at her indifferently. What a joke before the competition. You didn't say that good equipment can't participate in the competition. Jiang Hong only felt waves of dizziness in her head, and she looked like she was about to faint. Why, you cheated. Your talisman brush is cheating. Is there something wrong with your head? Arbor swept a glance at her. Good equipment is cheating? Don't talk nonsense with me. The prize is here. You can scram now. After a series of nagging, Miss Chow was already very impatient. She scolded him and gave the shopkeeper a look. The latter immediately understood and went forward to pick up the Jade Talisman Array brocade box that Jiang Hong put aside and quickly walked to Arbor's side. When Arbor reached out to take it, Jiang Hong pounced on him like a madwoman, muttering, "No, no way. You can't take my Jade Talisman Array. I won't use this Jade Talisman Array as a prize." Scram! Arbor was instantly enraged, and he kicked the madly pouncing Jiang Hong out. Jiang Hong rolled twice on the ground, and her head knocked against a nearby cabinet. She lay there miserably, pounding the ground as she roared, "Slut! You dare to steal my Jade Talisman Array? My Jiang family won't let you off. I'll even report to the Talisman Master Association and tell the president about your various misdeeds." Before she could finish her sentence, her entire person was swept out of the door by a speeding line of fire. Jiang Hong landed heavily on the ground outside. Her internal organs jolted, and she spat out a mouthful of old blood. Who knew if it was because she was swept by Mo Lien, or because she was so angry that she spat out blood? Mo Lien disdainfully swept a glance at the woman who was thrown out of the door by her fire spirit and shook her head. "You're already so old, yet you still don't understand the principle of accepting defeat. How stupid and petty." As for her, she thought she would win, but she didn't expect to lose it so easily. She's just not convinced. Just ignore her. No one had the guts to not admit defeat after losing to a lady. Arbor pursed his small lips and took the brocade box over. He turned his head to look at the fire spirit instructor of Jiaqing Academy, who was beaming with joy. "Here, thank you." The fire spirit instructor smiled as he handed over the 2 pieces of dragon tooth soul, the nameless jade, and the limitless glass stone that he had prepared earlier to Arbor. Arbor nodded and handed the items to Mo Lien. Then, he turned around and prepared to leave with Mo Lien. Old Talisman Master Song hurriedly stopped her and asked with a smile, little master, please stay. I wonder if Little Grandmaster has joined the Symbol Master Guild? Although our Ani Prefecture's Talisman Master Guild is only a small branch. However, as long as you join the Talisman Master Guild, you can systematically learn talisman techniques. This is a rare and precious opportunity. Moreover, after joining the Talisman Master Guild, you can buy blank talisman papers at talisman shops with a discount. If you're interested, Little Master. Arbor raised her hand and waved it. Not for the time being. Thank you for your kindness. A group of people swarmed up and surrounded the young couple. Everyone was talking at once. Chapter 2268. Some asked Little Master when he would come back to sell talismans again. Some asked if the young master beside him was a spirit weapon master. Some asked if he could make a weapon for him, and so on. Arbor's head hurt from all the chatter. Zhou Huan, who finally squeezed the side of the two, cried out excitedly, Master, W what we said before, W what I said about following you. W is it still in effect? This lowly one is willing to follow Master. Master, please give me some pointers. Do you still have companions in that woman's private court? Let's get them out together later. Arbor waved his hand at him. Go out first, I'll find you later. The two were surrounded by a group of people. Yin hastily pulled her into his embrace to protect her, fending off the swarming crowd. Master, Master, when will you come back to sell storage talismans? Master, Master, I'm willing to buy another storage talisman at a high price. Please promise me. Young Master, are you a spirit weapon master? What you said makes sense. Can you make a weapon for this lowly one? I'm willing to pay a high price. Master, young Master. Yin, this fellow's movements were extremely swift. While everyone was clamoring, he picked up his wifey and leaped onto the roof in quick strides. After a few leaps, he left behind a handsome and otherworldly back view to the clamoring crowd. Everyone looked in the direction they left, wringing their hands and calling out, young Master, please wait. Master, when will you come back to sell your storage talisman? This person must be a spirit weapon master. Everyone sighed and looked up at the direction of the two people on the roof. One by one, they lowered their heads. Arbor was carried around by Yin, then turned back to find the young boy, Zhou Huan. When Zhou Huan saw that they had indeed come to find her, she immediately grinned from ear to ear. Her small face was filled with joy. Great Master, you really have to come to find me? Come to this mansion tonight to find me. We'll go save your companions together. Okay. Zhou Huan nodded excitedly. Anyway, the house was only locked up, so it shouldn't be too dangerous. That woman, Jiang Hong, had been beaten to the ground. For the time being, she would not be able to cause any trouble. After Arbor bid farewell to the young boy, he returned to his small residence with Yin. As soon as he entered the room, the little guy turned around and started to dig at Yin. Lien, what are those two nameless jade stones? It must be something good, right? Seeing Yin raise her eyebrows, Arbor knew that the two nameless stones must be very rare objects. Looking at how he was seriously tricking that fire spirit major instructor from Jiaqing Academy, the little fellow couldn't help but laugh in his heart. Yin lowered his head and glanced at her. He lifted her up and kissed her. Do you want to know? Then kiss me. Xiaomu glanced around with a guilty conscience before hastily stamping his face with her lipstick. Hurry and speak. Perfunctory little fellow, this kiss was a bit of a stopgap. Although the crown prince was not satisfied, he still took out the two ordinary-looking jade stones with a flip of his hand. He pulled her little hand and placed it on one of them. Try to send a bit of your spiritual awareness in. Whoosh! One of the jade stones suddenly exploded with a fiery red glow of spiritual power. A ball of flame directly rushed up from the stone, instantly enveloping the two of them. Chapter 2269. This is Heavenly Fire Mithril, an extremely rare saint-grade forging material. Yin smiled as he whispered into her ear. Jojo, what are we going to do? You're rich. Sure enough, when the little fellow heard the word rich, her eyes lit up slightly. Originally, I had been looking for a material that could upgrade the ferrule to a divine weapon for you. This Heavenly Fire Mithril really exceeded my expectations. It's pretty good. Arbor understood. She hugged his slender neck and asked happily, My MO can be upgraded, right? Yin nodded, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. But can we give another name? We can call it Heavenly Fire Ruler in the future. If he wasn't careful, Yin would think that she was calling him. Mo is so affectionate. The little fellow blinked and said. Yin pressed down on the back of her little head and suddenly covered her little mouth. Miss Chiao was caught off guard. She only felt a touch of gentleness covering her and kissing her. For some reason, She almost couldn't control her heartbeat. Thump, 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 thump. She could almost clearly hear her own drumming heartbeat, as if it was going to jump out of her chest. This guy actually launched a surprise attack. Miss Chow bit him hard. The man chuckled softly and murmured, "Jojo, it hurts." Then he deepened the sudden kiss. Arbor felt as if the depths of her soul were being pulled by something, and she was about to sink into it bit by bit. She opened her eyes and looked at his blurred eyes that were so close to her. Her heart skipped a beat. This person's phoenix eyes were too beautiful. There seemed to be broken starlight in them. When he looked at her in a daze, it was as if he wanted to pull her in bit by bit. A strand of his black hair flowed down, fluttering by her ear. She only heard him murmuring beside her lips, "I'm punishing you for being perfunctory just now. If you're disobedient, you have to be punished." Miss Chow blinked. Suddenly, she exerted force with her hand and pulled him down. Not to be outdone, she kissed him forcefully with a fierce look on her face. Prince Mo chuckled. With a flick of his sleeve, he picked her up. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had already sat down by the bed. Arbor tilted his head and looked at him. His little hands struggled hard, but he couldn't break free. "Don't even think about running." The man hugged her and sat her on his lap. He stretched out his arms and hugged her slender waist. He rubbed her hair. "You want to run away after kissing me?" "No way." "Who ran away?" His little face was so hot that it was about to boil, but the little guy still had a stubborn look on his face as he raised his chin and shouted. "What? You don't want to admit it?" he said with a smile. His fingers twirled a strand of hair by her cheek, and he whispered in her ear, "If I didn't catch you just now, you would have run away by now. Do you think I don't understand your personality of running away after flirting?" Arbor couldn't help but want to laugh. She tried her best to keep a straight face as she turned back to look at him expressionlessly. But when she met his half-smile, she couldn't help but burst out laughing. She angrily punched him. "You've gotten yourself into trouble. You've offended the little emperor." The smile in the crown prince's eyes deepened. He hugged her and shook her. Okay. I won't tease you anymore. Look, these 2 pieces of heavenly fire secret silver are quite big. After you finish making your ruler, there should be some left. When the time comes, this husband will help you improve the bow." Chapter 2270. Miss Chow reached out and touched the 2 ice-cold stones. She stroked them with her small hand and transmitted a wisp of spiritual awareness. She watched as a layer of fire appeared on the stones, instantly enveloping the 2 of them in a fire barrier. Why would such a change happen when I transmitted a wisp of spiritual awareness? Do you know of a secret cultivation method in the upper 3 provinces? Some large clans use coiling dragon stones to test their children's aptitude when they are born. They select extremely talented disciples and let them cultivate freely in the early stages to nurture their spirit meridians and accumulate strength. When they reach adulthood, they use a secret method to directly help them advance to the entry level of the God realm. In the future, their cultivation speed will be much faster than ordinary people. Emolien pulled down her small hand and rubbed it in her own. As everyone knows, only those who comprehend a trace of the origin power of the 5 spirits of heaven and earth can successfully advance to the spiritual realm. On our Seacone planet, it's precisely because the spiritual energy is weak and unable to comprehend the power of the 5 spirits that a large number of people are prevented from advancing to the spiritual realm. Arbor nodded, thinking inwardly. When I gain a firm foothold in the divine continent, I'll bring Shaolin and the others over. Her younger brother and sister's aptitudes are quite good. Wouldn't it be a waste of talent to leave them on Seacone planet? This secret method must be carried out in conjunction with the 5 spirits' secret silver. That's it. Arbor looked surprised. Her small mouth opened slightly, and a thought flashed through her mind. Oh, I understand. Those who use the secret method to advance use this kind of heavenly fire secret silver to replace the comprehension of the 5 spirits' origin power, right? And Emolien nodded, smiling as she lowered her head and lightly pecked her small mouth. because they themselves have skipped the spiritual realm, but the comprehension of the five spirits is indispensable. If they want to quickly proceed with the comprehension of the five spirits, they have to take a shortcut. The aristocratic families of the upper three provinces are just this rich and overbearing. Actually, this kind of stone is very useful when added to divine artifacts or even sacred artifacts. It's too low-end to just use it to replace the comprehension of the five spirits. After all, in my opinion, people who can't even comprehend the five spirits' origin power can't be considered to have good aptitudes. Emollien's eyes were indifferent, and her tone was slightly mocking. Good aptitude from birth? But it doesn't mean that their aptitudes are still good in the next 10 years or so. Idiots will always be idiots. He smiled and lowered his head to look at Arbor. His gaze was very gentle. Unlike my Jojo, who was able to sense the origins of the five spirits in the lower realm. He even sensed the holy water, holy wood, and holy earth. Arbor was a little excited by her praise, but he was still a little embarrassed. Actually, the holy water was a legacy item of the sect, so it was best not to mention it for now. That holy wood, this thing, she still didn't know why it had been in her body since she was young. As for the Holy Land, it was quite funny. It had come knocking on his door. Jojo, why are you so smart? Emollien leaned closer to her and rubbed her cheeks with a smile. Arbor blushed at his compliment. Actually, it's not that great. Nonsense, it's amazing. Emollien reached out and threw the two pieces of mithril into her inner world. She stretched out her hand and said, "Give me the ferrule and debeo first. This time, the forging will take about half a month. Is there any problem?" Arbor shook her head. What problem could there be? Anyway, she had her husband by her side. She didn't even need to fight by herself. Okay, then leave it with me for a while. My beautiful little master, do you have any orders for me? The little golem jumped out and flattered as usual. Emollien put away the ferrule that Arbor handed over and also put away the muttering golem debeo. Chapter 2271. Can you make debeo stop being so noisy after the modification? That won't do. Being noisy is his specialty. Emollien smiled and tapped her forehead lightly. Imitating debeo's tone, he said, my beautiful little master. Arbor rolled her eyes at him. She was 200% sure that Emollien had taught him that. Emollien smiled and hugged her waist tightly. Jojo, this heavenly fire ruler will grow into a divine weapon in the future. You and the ruler have always been telepathically connected. During battle, you can merge it into your body and become one with it. Emollien paused and said, when the time comes, you will be able to use the fire spirit on this piece of heavenly fire secret silver. I checked just now. After the ruler merges with this heavenly fire secret silver, it should be able to produce a spiritual fire of 7th level and above. Arbor was really energized now. She turned her little face to look at him and said, you mean, as long as I merge the weapon into my body, I will be able to control this 7th level spiritual fire? Emollien nodded. Yes. Heavens, she could merge the weapon into her body and use the spiritual fire? When Arbor heard this, she immediately revealed an excited expression. The biggest difference between a divine weapon and a spiritual weapon is that after the user and the weapon become one, the divine weapon will be more effective. But merging the weapon isn't that easy. Emollien looked at her with a smile. But I believe that Jojo will be fine. What happens if the merging fails? The user will be injured, and the divine weapon will be destroyed. Arbor was stunned. It has such a big impact. Emollien nodded. Divine weapons all have their own senses. If it is unwilling to become one with the weapon, it will explode on its own in most cases, harming others and itself. But Jojo doesn't need to worry at all. You and the ruler have been together for so many years. Your hearts are already connected. There's no chance of it exploding on its own if it injures you. Arbor nodded her little head. She naturally knew that her Momo was the best. This level 7 spiritual fire cannot be mentioned in the same breath as your holy water and holy wood. Its level is indeed a little low. When we find heavenly fire mithril that is of a higher level, I will reforge it for you, and you'll be able to upgrade your fire spirit. Arbor, on the other hand, was very satisfied. She was a person who couldn't comprehend the power of the fire spirit. Being able to use the 7th rank fire spirit through the man-weapon unite was already a stroke of luck. How could she be picky? All right, go to bed early. I'll go and forge it for you tomorrow morning. Emollient hugged her and reached out to undo her belt. The little fellow immediately jumped down from his lap and ran into the inner room. He couldn't help but stutter, I took a bath. Don't follow me. Emollient sat on the edge of the bed obediently. Jojo, do you want some hot water? That night, Zohuan came to meet the two of them as scheduled. After a few words, Arbor summoned Qinghuan and had this dumbfounded little boy sit on it together. They headed towards Jianghong's private residence. When they arrived at Jianghong's residence, the large courtyard door was tightly locked. Arbor and Emollient brought Zohuan in through the back door. Under Zohuan's guidance, they directly went to the woodshed in the backyard. That woodshed door had 2 defensive restrictions added, but in Arbor's view, it was completely useless. Emollient stepped forward and struck out a spiritual fire, immediately shaking open the woodshed's restriction. The 3 of them kicked open the woodshed door and saw 6 or 7 young people around the age of 20 sitting against the wall. Zohuan. Chapter 2272. One of them involuntarily cried out in alarm when he saw the person who barged into the woodshed. Amichim, quickly get up and follow. Zohuan, you're here to save us, another person said agitatedly. These two are. Aya, don't ask so many questions first. Let's leave this place first. Someone's coming, Arbor said with a frown. The young man at the front named Zohuan involuntarily shuddered and took a step back. There are more than a dozen guards and retainers in this residence. Arbor glanced askance at that person. Aren't you talisman practitioners? Why do all of you look like cowards? That woman took away all the protective talismans on us. At the mention of this, the group of young men couldn't help but feel indignant. They were all tricked into making talismans for that woman. Every talisman they made was plundered by that greedy woman, Jiang Hong, and sold to talisman shops. You have so many level 13 and level 14 mystic cultivators, but why are you all like weak chickens without any resistance? Arbor swept them a glance. The young man who spoke first couldn't help but say indignantly, Who's a weak chicken? It's just that the enemy is strong and we're weak. The other party is a level 3 spiritual cultivator, so how can we be their match? Don't deny it when I say you're weak chickens. Arbor glanced at them irritably and said to Zohuan, if these little brothers of yours are all like this, then don't follow me. Sorry, her money didn't come from the wind, and she didn't raise weak-willed good-for-nothings. After saying that, she held Emollient's hand and walked out the door without looking back. Those young men couldn't help but feel a bit angry. They looked up at Zohuan and asked, Who is she, Zohuan? Aya, Qihua. Don't say any more. Zohuan rushed out the door with her group of companions and saw more than a dozen guards surrounding them, shouting to kill. It doesn't matter if your cultivation isn't good. Remember that you're talisman practitioners, Arbor said coldly. The greatest effect of talisman practitioners is to use talismans to win and kill enemies. I have to make sure that I have talismans that I can use and draw at all times. If your hand speed isn't good, then practice. Don't dawdle all day long. You can't even draw a single talisman in an hour. Arbor narrowed his cold eyes and stared at the dozen or so servants rushing over. She waved her hand, and a dozen or so paper charms floated out. They looked like a butterfly with wings and approached the group of servants with whooshing sounds. All the talismans were activated at the same time. Streams of light poured out from the talismans and rushed to the front of the group of servants. Immediately, they turned into circles of 8 trigrams and bound everyone. The circles of 8 trigrams talismans were like a spider web, tightly controlling each and every one of the servants within. Grubind, Zohuan, Qihua, and the others widened their eyes and stared at the great talisman master in front of them in disbelief. Was this really a binding talisman? How could the binding talisman be so powerful? Talisman masters aren't static. They can master all talismans through a comprehensive study. While immobilizing, you can also bind, stun, or do something else. Do you think a talisman can only be used for one purpose? Mine is an 8 trigrams binding talisman that combines the effects of immobilizing and binding. Arbor still felt that it wasn't enough to shock people. She said coldly, "No one taught me to draw like this. It's just that after drawing more and more, you'll know that everything is possible." This kind of mixed talisman was indeed something that she accidentally comprehended. Chapter 2273. Moreover, drawing mixed talismans on talisman paper was easy to fail. Because the material of the talisman paper was too light and thin, it could not bear the power of 2 kinds of talismans. Therefore, she was so eager to ask Emolien to get her 10,000 blank jade talismans. The talisman power in the jade talisman was naturally not the same as that of the talisman paper. The 8 trigrams binding talisman used by Arbor now was a combination of the effects of fixing and binding. It could be said to be the first talisman to transform it into the shape of the 8 trigrams. Chihuahua's face was full of excitement, his eyes fixed on the field, unable to turn away. Zohuan on the side was even more excited than him. She clenched her fists tightly and couldn't restrain the trembling of her body. There was a feeling of finding an organization in an instant. How to break it? In the past, it was not easy for him to find a basic talisman book when he fumbled about making talismans alone. It was very difficult for a talisman master like them, who did not belong to a talisman family, to learn and live. Talisman masters were passed down by word of mouth and passed down from generation to generation. Zohuan's father was also a talisman master, so she could learn a little from her father's generation. The difficulty of becoming a talisman master like Chihua and the others could be imagined. The little girl was too powerful. All the talisman masters present thought so in their hearts, and it was difficult to hide their excitement. If you want to learn from me, at least you must first learn to be tenacious and never shrink back, Arbor said coldly, and her eyes fell on Zohuan and the others. What are you waiting for? Go up and fight. Okay. Zohuan was the first to react. She rolled up her sleeves and rushed forward. Regardless of the weapon, she directly picked up a black brick from the side and smashed it on the head of a bound servant. Arbor's expression was slightly relaxed. If these guys didn't even have the courage to fight back against the people she had bound, then there was no need to follow her. This young man had no blood at all. What could he do with such a coward? I'll let you guys lock us up and bully us. I'll let you rob our talismans to sell. I'll let you help the evildoers. I'll beat you to death. 8 talisman masters swarmed up and beat more than a dozen servants until their heads were full of blood. One by one, they lay on the ground on the verge of death. Their bodies were still covered by the 8 trigrams binding talismans. It was as if their bodies were covered by the 8 trigrams diagram. They couldn't move at all. All they could do was worry helplessly. They couldn't even open their eyes. Arbor glanced at the crowd and flicked his hand, removing the 8 trigrams binding talismans from their bodies. The leading servant let out a loud roar and summoned a long sword from his conscience, accompanied by a tiger's roar. One man and one Xian beast charged towards Arbor, biting and slashing with all their might. Arbor didn't even look at them. He just said to the youths present, "Talisman masters don't need you to waste your energy fighting with others. As long as the right talisman was used at the right time, it would be fine. You can easily win. I don't understand what you people are thinking. 6 or 7 symbol masters have actually been bullied to this extent." As he spoke, a talisman appeared in front of Arbor. Defense talisman. Open. The big tiger that had rushed over crashed heavily into her defensive talisman circle with a loud bang. It howled and shook its big head. Arbor instantly applied a layer of Vajra talisman on his hand and stretched out an arm from the defensive talisman circle. A heavy punch landed on the big tiger's left eye that was close at hand. The stupid tiger let out a mournful roar. Chapter 2274. To everyone's annoyance, the tiger's head tilted back and drooled from the little fellow's punch. That string of drool drifted out with the wind. Hoosie's expression was also very coquettish, and its furry face twisted. Everyone watched as the stupid tiger was punched out by the ferocious little girl. That was not the end of it. Everyone discovered with lingering fear. That tiger was punched out by the little girl, right? Unexpectedly, the little girl released an absorption talisman, and the force sucked the stupid tiger back to the defensive talisman circle. Another punch landed heavily on the stupid tiger's other eye. The same expression, the same drool, the same movement, and the same speed. Everyone felt as if the scene just now was replayed, and they watched as the little girl punched the tiger in the eye and punched it out again. Everyone silently lit a candle for the stupid tiger in their hearts and mourned in unison. Big brother, rest in peace. Woo-woo-woo-woo. Hoosie squirmed with the tiger's head and quickly fled the scene with its tail between its legs, not even caring about its owner. Everyone, are you still a fucking tiger? You're not even as good as a cat. A talisman master only needs to draw talismans fast, cast talismans fast, have a flexible mind, and change talismans fast. You can easily defeat the opponent in seconds. Arbor expressionlessly sent the leader of the guards who rushed in front of her with a sword flying. Of course, you don't have many types of talismans in your heads, so you won't know how to change talismans in battle. You just need to study hard in the future. Arbor used an 8 trigrams binding talisman on him again, causing him to fly out and crash into a tree in the backyard. He was completely confined to the tree, and his neck and mouth were crooked, unable to move at all. A talisman master should be an elegant profession. Xiao Mu withdrew the defensive barrier around her and glanced indifferently at the dumbfounded Zhou Huan and company. You can turn a city into ashes with a snap of your fingers, kill 1 person in 10 steps while joking, and kill 100 people in 100 steps. Isn't that right? If you want to learn from me, you have to listen to me in the future. If you can't bear the hardships and fatigue, you can get out now. Eldest Miss. Zhou Huan was the first to kneel on one knee in agitation. He cupped his hands towards the heavenly Tao and said, Zhou Huan is willing to follow Eldest Miss. Qihua is also willing to follow Eldest Miss to death. Fong Wenyao, Fong Wendong, follow Eldest Miss. Arbor looked at them expressionlessly and nodded. Oh, if you want to follow me, everyone has to follow my rules. I only have one rule. Since we're teammates, we have to support each other in the future. Remember, don't stab each other in the back. I don't think any of you want to experience the way I treat traitors. Arbor said coldly. His voice was cold. Yes, we will follow Eldest Miss's orders. Arbor glanced at them and said, All right, get up. Go and tidy up the things in this private residence. Take away all the valuable things. Consider this your first bucket of gold in life. Don't be so stupid in the future. Don't count your money after being sold. You can't even protect your own talisman. Yes. Emolyen's lips curved slightly. He stood behind Jojo and looked at her, his eyes full of pampering. The little fellow turned around and bounced at his side, muttering unhappily, I took a bath for nothing. It's hot again. Chapter 2275. Emolyen could not help but laugh out loud. He hugged his little wife and whispered in her ear, It's all right. I'll wash it for you when we get back. A guy with evil intentions, but no guts. Xiao Mu cast him a glance before proudly lifting her small chin. Then come. If you don't come, you're a puppy. Emolyen was speechless. The little fellow was getting naughty. She would tease him from time to time. He almost could not handle it. When I'm done forging your MOMO, we'll return to the divine continent immediately. Arbor wanted to laugh, but she said expressionlessly, Yes. Then you might as well go to Fish Orchid Planet to forge. Find a secluded place and don't disturb the senior sister's cultivation. Emolyen was stunned and then laughed. That's right. In that case, I don't need to be in such a hurry. I can also study it carefully and see if I can improve the quality of this heavenly fire secret silver first. Who knows, we might be able to forge it into an 8th grade fire spirit before embedding it. The difference of one grade was thousands of miles. The little fellow's eyes lit up. All right, you go forge. I'll go back to Shuntian Prefecture. We'll split up. Mo Yin replied with a MHM. Don't forget to inform the Dunstock side. After the group finished ransacking Jianghong's house, they returned to their own little house. The sky was almost bright. Arbor let Zhou Huan, Qi Hua, and the rest for 4 hours. She had just settled them down when there was a series of knocks on the door. She opened the door and saw Dun Zhong leaning against the door. He wiped his sweat and panted. What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry? Do you need to use the 800 miles express communication Jade Talisman to call nonstop? As he spoke, he walked into the court mindlessly. Is there tea? I'm dying of thirst. Arbor raised her little fist and gestured behind his head. He didn't know why, but when he saw that Gung Pingcheng's face, he wanted to beat him up. Mo Yin couldn't help but laugh and pulled down her little hand. She turned around and glanced at Guan Zhaodang, who had followed her timidly. The moment his gaze fell on the door, he saw a black shadow flash from the corner of the wall. Mo Yin retracted his awe-inspiring gaze and revealed a mocking sneer. Arbor kicked the door open, took her husband's hand, and strode towards the stone table. You'll be in charge of the care hall from now on. Arbor glared at Dunzung when he saw Dunzung grabbing the kettle and drinking several cups of tea. Did you hear that? I heard it. Dun Julian nodded repeatedly and approached the two with a grin. Little master, then do I have to stay here for a while to sort out the affairs of an prefecture? Of course. Arbor rolled his eyes at him. We're leaving for Shuntian Prefecture in the afternoon. When we pick up the little yellow crane, we'll set off for the Divine Continent. Ah, so fast, Dun Zung said with a frown. Little master, are you going to be a hands-off shopkeeper? Arbor snorted and patted Dun Zhang's shoulder hard. She turned to look at Mo Lien and called, Husband. Mo Lien couldn't help but laugh. He knew that the little fellow didn't have the patience to talk to Dun Zhu anymore, so he beckoned to Dun Zhu. Come here, I have a few instructions for you. Keep this storage talisman well. Mo Lien handed him a blue talisman. You'll stay here in the future and look after the affairs of the 6 prefectures. All of you leave. Chapter 2276. Dunge's face fell. Our peony, little Tai Sui, and Shurchin all leaving. Emolian nodded and patted him on the shoulder. Thank you for your hard work. If I see a more suitable body in the Divine Land, I'll keep an eye out for you. Really? Dunge's face lit up with excitement. Of course. Emolian nodded. I'll leave the 6 prefectures' affairs to you. Although Guan Zhaodang is under Jojo's control now, there are many things. You still can't trust him too much. There's an antidote for Guan Zhaodang in the storage talisman I gave you. Just give him one every Lunar New Year. Keep him under your control and use him for you. Emolian looked at him deeply. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. Dunja nodded. Select the elite disciples and train them. This matter must continue. Don't slack off. Okay. I'll train the Shuntian guards well. Emolian gave him a few more instructions, then led him back to Arbor and Guan Zhaodang. When Guan Zhaodang saw Emolian, he felt a bit fearful and took 2 steps back. All right, there's nothing else. You can leave. Dun just stood up and cupped his hands. Then we'll take our leave. Little master, I wish you a safe journey. Arbor nodded and looked coldly at Guan Zhaodang. If I find out that you're disloyal and unwilling to follow Prefectural Lord Gung's management, I'll punish you like this. Suddenly, a huge wave surged out from her palm. With a bang, it smashed a stone block beside the Hall of Caregiving's feet into pieces. The pieces fell to the ground and rolled down. Guan Zhaodong's heart skipped a beat. He turned and bowed to Arbor. I wouldn't dare, he replied, then quickly left with Dunja. Arbor looked coldly at his back. When Dunja takes over Ani Prefecture, Guan Zhaodang won't need to exist anymore, the little guy said coldly. I'm afraid it's not that easy. Mo Lien chuckled. Guan Zhaodang isn't a fool. He should be able to understand what you mean and take precautions. Arbor held her husband's hand. I can't be bothered. The 6 prefectures aren't my goal at all. She was going to the Divine Land. What she wanted to flatten was also the divine land. I wonder if those people who owe me, who have tried every means to stop me from setting foot on the divine land, are ready. Emolien chuckled softly. I'm guessing that they're ready. He had probably washed his neck clean and was waiting to be slaughtered. Jojo, go take a shower and rest for a while. I'll ask Little Tree to bring me to Fish Orchid Planet later. On the surface, Arbor nodded his little head, but he didn't let go of his waist. His pair of big eyes looked left and right at him, refusing to let go. The Crown Prince's heart almost melted from her gaze. He lowered his head and kissed her forehead. Jojo, look, I'm not going anywhere. I'm with you, he said gently. If you miss me, you'll be able to see me once you reach Fish Orchid Planet. Arbor thought that he was right. She nodded her little head hard and let go of his little hands. All right, go take a shower. Isn't it hot? Emolien smiled and rubbed her little head. Then, he hurried her back to her room. After her figure disappeared from his sight, his gentle and elegant expression gradually turned cold. His handsome face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. Chapter 2277. Taong. Yes. Are you ready? Emolien asked coldly. Yes. Everything is ready. With a creak, the door of the small mansion was slammed open from the inside by a gust of air. Tong flew out with a group of people, and in a moment he used arrows and spirit power to force out the people hiding in the corner. After those people appeared, they threw out several talismans under their sleeves. Inchi immediately approached. Emolien stood at the side and watched coldly. Tong rushed forward with a group of black-clothed youths. A large net filled with flickering electric currents appeared in his hands. Each of them held a corner of the net and covered the group of people along with the talismans they had cast, sealing them in the net. After a few bangs, several talismans flew out and exploded beside the talisman caster. A layer of black chi suddenly attacked the bodies of the people in the net, causing them to cry out and fall to the ground. Their bodies were covered in a layer of black, cold death chi, and it was obvious that they couldn't live. Emolien raised a pair of cold eyes and coldly stared at the fleeing figure in the distance. With a wave of his hand, Tong led a group of agile youths and immediately chased after them. Emolien waved her hand again to seal the door of the mansion, and then her figure disappeared. When she appeared again, she was already 100 miles away, and her cold gaze fell on the thin black figure that was caught in the net by Tong and the others. Where do you think you're going? Emolien said coldly, and raised her hand. The net that was wrapped around the person instantly flew up. When the thin man found that the net on his body was gone, he immediately wanted to run away. Unexpectedly, his whole body was controlled by a huge force, and he couldn't move at all and stiffened on the spot. What are you doing? He angrily scolded. You're winning with numbers. It's an unfair victory. Emolien sneered and withdrew the huge force on him, and a trace of ridicule appeared on her cold face. You don't accept it? Of course, I'm not convinced. You have the advantage in numbers, so it's not a big deal even if you win. The skinny man turned his head. His eyes were squeezed to the side of his nose. The distance between his eyes was very short, making his face look very strange. Emolien threw him a cold smile. With a wave of his hand, a mechanical puppet was released by him. With a bang, it fell to the ground, creating a small cloud of dust. If you beat me, I'll let you go. But if you lose, you have to obediently take us to see your master. The skinny man stared blankly for a moment. Then, he stared at the golem that had suddenly appeared with all his might. He muttered something under his breath, and a rune appeared between his fingers. He immediately threw it out. Bang, 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 bang. A few Xianyin talismans cracked beside the golem at the same time. However, the tragedy was that the Xianyin talisman was completely useless against the golem. The golem was 3 times the size of the skinny man. With a stomp of its foot, a shallow pit appeared on the ground. Although the golem was tall, its agility was shocking. It leapt and jumped and occasionally turned around to give a roundhouse kick. It heavily kicked the skinny man's stomach and sent him flying. Bang! The strange-looking man clutched the wound on his chest and struggled to stand up. He didn't have any intention to continue fighting and hurriedly turned around to escape. But just as his body moved, he heard a gust of wind above his head. Chapter 2278. When he raised his eyes to look, his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. He saw that mechanical puppet called Number 1 descend from the sky and swiftly press down on his head. If this were to happen, even if he didn't die, he would lose half his life. The skinny man screamed and rolled on the ground to avoid the attack. Bam! The mechanical puppet landed heavily on the ground. When the sun shone on his black, wood-carved face, it emitted a cold metallic light. It stretched out its arm and slapped towards his face. The skinny man quivered and hurriedly rolled one round on the ground. Only this time, he wasn't so lucky. The mechanical puppet's speed was actually very fast, and in a leap, it was already in front of him and lifted its leg to step on his left thigh. He clearly heard a crisp caw sound, and it was so painful that tears came out. You stop it. A malicious glint floated in the depths of his eyes, and he abruptly flung out 2 talismans from his sleeves. The talismans flew towards Mo Yin at an extremely tricky angle. Damn it. As long as he got rid of this man who was controlling the mechanical puppet, he would definitely be able to turn defeat into victory. Mo Yin coldly watched from the sidelines for a while, and seeing the 2 talismans flying towards him, he couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Just a little profound talisman, and he dared to display his sleight skill in front of an expert. A pitch-black lotus seal appeared in front of him, and with a speed that surpassed the speed of light, it fiercely slapped down the 2 profound talismans. At the same time, a purple flame suddenly appeared and smashed into that person's chest. This flame's power was very terrifying, and it knocked him backwards and rolled twice. His head heavily hit the ground, and with a wah sound, blood spurted out from his mouth. If you don't speak, I will search your soul. Mo Yin, who had lost his patience, stretched out 5 slender fingers from his sleeves and was about to suck that man into his palm. The skinny man was the first to give in to the pressure and softened. Your Highness, please spare me. I will speak. I will tell you everything I know. Lead the way to your master. After a while, the skinny man pointed at an independent wooden house on the hillside not far away and screamed, It's there. Master's father? The entire house was burned down. Burn it. Mo Yin sneered and ordered Number 1, who was following closely beside her. Let's go and take a look. Golem 1 accepted the order and rushed into the burning hut on the hillside. However, a few minutes later, another earth-shattering sound came from the hillside. The entire house collapsed into flames. Golem 1 was also covered in flames as he rushed over from the burning hill. He rolled all the way and rubbed himself against the tree bark. Useless thing, Mo Yin cursed with an icy expression. With a flip of his hand, a black flame shot out, completely absorbing all the flames on the golem's body. At this moment, the metal on the mechanical puppet's face seemed to have been melted by the flames, and there were streaks here and there. Mo Yin's cold gaze turned from its face to the skinny man who was trembling in fear. You dare trick me? The skinny man's eyes narrowed, and he hurriedly waved his hands and shouted with difficulty, No. My master, Master Chu, really lives here. He. Mo Yin waved her hand, and the skinny man flew over uncontrollably, his head landing in her palm. Chapter 2279. No, don't. Every word I said is the truth. I'm not lying. The man in front of him was truly terrifying. How could he dare to hide anything from him? No, don't search my soul. I can tell you everything I know, Your Highness. I, Master Chu, and I have been staying here for almost 7 days. Under my master's instructions, I have been carefully monitoring that Miss Qiao. He really didn't know whether this terrifying young master had known from the start that they were following him, or if he only found out now thinking about it. It was impossible for him to find out now. The small and skinny man shook his head in panic. I also know some things about Master. When Master was at Shuntian Prefecture, He schemed against that Miss Chiao. Mo Yin raised her brows slightly, indicating for him to continue. The small and skinny man hurriedly revealed everything he knew. Before the academy competition, Master found a few students from Hippo Academy and poisoned them with forbidden curses. Originally, he wanted them to kill Miss Chiao during the competition, but who would have thought that they would be saved instead? After that, Master sent a few people to investigate the situation, but none of them returned. So Master stopped for a long time, until you came to Ani Prefecture. Master then brought me to investigate and waited for an opportunity to make a move. Your master is from Clear Sky Sect. He didn't expect that even after Clear Sky Sect had been eradicated, there were still remnants of evil that traveled thousands of miles to make trouble for his JoJo. The small and skinny man hurriedly shook his head and said, I don't know Master's specific identity. But everyone calls him Master Chu. His use of poison has reached perfection, and his forbidden talisman arts have already reached the black level perfection stage. Seeing Mo Yin's expression turn cold, the small and skinny man hurriedly shrieked, I am telling the truth. I really don't know a master's identity. I am just a little apprentice that's learning from him. Look, I'm not even that skilled in using talismans. Mo Yin sneered at him. One, kill him. After the order was given, the skinny man immediately realized that his neck had fallen into the golem's icy hand. He wanted to beg for mercy again, but the cold hand didn't give him the chance. Crack! His neck was broken by someone. Mo Yin's cold gaze fell on the golem. She reached out and put it away without saying a word. Tong raised his head to look at the crown prince, who was shrouded in a layer of pressure. He knelt on one knee and lowered his head. This subordinate was incompetent and actually let that Master Chu escape. A black lotus flower ignited in Mo Yin's hand, and with a flick of his finger, that lotus-shaped black flame burned the petite man's corpse cleanly without leaving behind a trace of flesh or skin. Since someone wants to play, I'll accompany him to the end. What are you doing? What are you doing? A loud voice came from behind Tong's group. Mo Yin turned her head and looked coldly at the group of guards who were being escorted over. The leader had a square face, and his expression was very serious and old-fashioned. Kneel! Bam! The leader with a square face was kicked to the ground, and one of his knees landed heavily on the ground. What the fuck? The bodyguards beside him were also kicked to the ground one after another, and they started cursing. Chapter 2280. You're the captain of the forest guards? Fong Su? Mo Yin looked coldly at the person kneeling in front of her. Yes. Fong Su stiffened his neck and answered in a low voice. You're not convinced? Mo Yin glanced at him and waved her hand, releasing the two black-clothed youths holding him down. I'm not convinced, Fong Su said angrily and struggled to stand up. This subordinate is here on the Emperor's orders to ask your highness to return. Kneel. Tong kicked him again, but was stopped by Mo Yin. Who is this prince? Fong Su froze, then stiffened his neck and said, You're the Emperor's son, the crown prince of the divine province, personally conferred by his majesty. Who are you? This subordinate is the captain of the forest guards, Fong Su. A mere captain of the forest guards dares to disrespect your superior. Drag him away and give him 30 lashes before you talk. Two black-clothed youths walked out from beside Tong and dragged Fong Su away to give him a beating without another word. Fong Su's subordinates immediately wilted when they saw this, shrinking back and not daring to say a word. Their captain had been dragged away by the crown prince for a beating, so if they didn't know their limits, they wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being beaten. A moment later, the blockhead who had suffered 30 lashes was dragged back by the two black-clothed youths and thrown in front of Mo Yin. Do you know why this prince wants to beat you? You don't like me. Tong's mouth twitched. Mo Yin couldn't help but snicker. Since you don't understand, then drag it on for another 30 lashes. Everyone, after another 30 lashes, even the thick-skinned blockhead felt that he couldn't take it anymore. The two black-clothed youths who beat him were also bad guys. Their subordinates were light as a feather, but when the lashes landed, There was blood under the skin and blood on the buttocks. They were clearly black-clothed goods who used hidden strength. Do you know why this prince wants to beat you now? Fong Su gritted his teeth and didn't say a word. You still don't understand? Then I'll give you another 30 lashes. Everyone! Exclamation point. Your Highness, you're so willful. Please, not everyone is as smart as you. Fong Su, this blockhead, how could he understand your meaning? Cough. A young man dressed in black walked out from Tong's side. He had a pale and handsome face, but his expression was somewhat lazy. He couldn't stand it anymore and said, Your Highness, if you continue beating him like this, even if you beat him 300 times, he might not understand what you mean. His IQ, cough, compared to yours. There's a huge gap. What a good bootlicker. Everyone applauded in their hearts. The Crown Prince's cold expression was clearly showing signs of easing up. Third Fu, when did you come back? Today. The lazy youth chuckled and walked to his side. He bowed and said, Your Highness, for such an honest person, it's better for us to get straight to the point so that he can understand. Fong Su straightened his neck and said loudly, His Highness the Crown Prince does not want to see Fong Su. The lazy young man couldn't help but raise his hand to support his forehead, and he glanced at Fong Su and said, Wrong, wrong, all wrong. It's not that His Highness doesn't like you. He doesn't like your master. Fong Su was stunned, and a trace of bewilderment appeared on his old-fashioned face. Big? Emperor? That's right. His Highness just doesn't like Emperor. You rascal. If you had changed the words I'm an eyesore to I'm an eyesore, His Highness might have been in a better mood and not hit you. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.